What up? I want to start doing some musical type stuff. What up, guys? It's Mac and Black, number 53 for Mac and Black, and as you guys can see, finally we've got my handsome co-host on the Skype. Nick, what up, man?
What's going on?
How's Texas treating you?
It's starting to not be so hot out here, so I mean that's off to a great start.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that I've been doing some DoorDash driving out here, and if I could just call as a fellow black man to all my fellow black people, can I just give you like one good word of advice? It's okay to tip your driver. Just letting you guys know.
Oh man.
Dude, it's the worst. So apparently Houston has to be the most gated city in the entire United States of America. Like every apartment complex is gated.
Oh.
So then you go into the gates, right? They give you no gate code. It's hard to see these numbers.
Just figure it out.
And then the people who don't tip have the audacity to be on the third floor with no elevator.
Oh my God.
I'm like, this has got to be the biggest bunch of BS. So please tip your driver, even if it's $1.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even tweak if it's $1.
Let's just make that for everyone. General rule of thumb: tip your driver, guys, please.
Tip your driver. Sweet mama see.
But you
don't
also
have me going through hoops playing. I can use my video game mentality just so I can find these people's buildings, and then they be like, you can just leave my order on the floor. Yeah, because you know that I'm going to cuss your ass out for not tipping me, for having me drive so far.
I tipped in the app. Don't worry. Yeah. But, it's been a couple weeks now, so hopefully you're all settled in over there.
Yes, sir.
All right. I mean, dude, we missed last week, so I was running a little under the weather last week. Had a little bit of a health scare there, but now we're back, and yeah, man, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. I mean, now we obviously last time we spoke, I think we were still talking about some of the conference semifinals for the NBA, but I think we should just jump right into that one because, man, we both talked about it before the show started, and I think it's about time for us to start to look at our favorite word on the show is overrated, it seems like, right? So so now we're starting to look at some coaches, and I want to talk about specifically in the West. The Nuggets come back from a 3-1 deficit in the series again and beat the Clippers, and the Clippers, Nick, looked – I mean, I talked them up specifically a lot because – their defense was so strong when we saw them, but they weren't really – we also talked about how they were injured in some points, so they didn't really have a lot of chemistry with each other. That's one of their excuses that I might give them. But otherwise, man, that team is way too talented to go out like that. And I think both you and I are both thinking this has got to be on Doc Rivers, right?
You're right. We were talking before the show, and because we'll get into the East in a minute with the Miami Heat being up 2-0 on Boston, and I know you want to talk some things about Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this, over the last, I want to say almost the last 4 or 5 days. I'm not understanding how Doc Rivers is getting this free pass when it comes to the Clippers. Like, let's not talk about the chemistry issues because the chemistry issues got you up 3-1.
Right.
You can't lose 3 games in a row and be like, well, we just don't have the chemistry right now. That's nonsense.
That's a good point.
You have Paul George that's a top 50 superstar in the NBA. You have Kawhi Leonard that's fresh. And here's the funny thing about that before we get into Doc.
Yeah.
I love how all these stories, the same stories that I tell you that I can't stand when it comes to the Knicks, where all these players were so close to signing to us when like 4 months ago you said you had no intentions of coming to New York, right? Yeah. It's the same thing we got with Kawhi. For whatever reason, Kawhi Leonard was so gung-ho to go out to L.A. when the country of Canada, let alone the city of Toronto, was going to make him the prime minister for bringing them an NBA championship.
Yeah.
The grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Right.
Like, if you're sitting back and looking at the deal that put Paul George in Los Angeles and you guys didn't even make it to the conference finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder are sitting and looking real pretty right now.
Yeah.
You know, they got how many first-round draft picks and then, you know, a couple of pieces here and there, but they're built because the Clippers went all in and Kawhi and PG couldn't get it done. And the question that I had to ask, and I asked you before the show is, you know, where do we place the blame on Doc Rivers? Like I personally believe that I think, and this is just my own personal beliefs, that I think that Doc Rivers gets somewhat of a free pass, and this is going to sound bad, it's because he's black.
Yeah, and there's a lack of black NBA coaches right now, right?
I'm telling you, because like something to me doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Doc Rivers, in my opinion, with all of the expectations that were put on the Los Angeles Clippers, should be fired.
Right.
He should be fired. Because as I asked you before the show, let me ask you this. Outside of what he did in Boston, where is this Doc Rivers is a top 10 coach resume?
Right.
He's come up close. He comes up short with the Clippers during Lob City. This was the year that they were supposed to overtake the Lakers. The Lakers are too old. You know, LeBron James isn't the clutch player that he once was, and all this other BS. Frank Vogel isn't the guy, and all this other nonsense that comes with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Clippers were supposed to be the new team. The Clippers were supposed to be the Mets.
Right.
Basically.
Take over LA.
Exactly. They're supposed to take over, just like how people swore up and down that when the Mets went to the World Series back in 2015 that they were going to be the new faces of New York, and they've been anything but. That's who the Clippers are supposed to be.
Yeah,
and no, they came up short.
And how many times can you get away with, Nick, blowing a 3-1 lead? This is the third time that he's done this.
Exactly.
And in specific, and you mentioned it, I mean, the guy started his coaching career with the Orlando Magic, and I think I told you about this on the show, how, you know, he had a lot of missteps in Orlando, one of which was losing out on Tim Duncan because he didn't want his wife to fly on the team plane. Next thing you know, he goes to Boston, gets really lucky with that big three, gets that championship, and in 2013, he's been with the Clippers, and he's blown 3 separate series with 3-1 leads. That's really hard to imagine other coaches survive that. And clearly, I think what it is, Nick, is more so that, you know, Doc is such a player's coach that that sometimes it's to a fault. Like, you know, you can't always have the best friend on the bench, right? Like, you know, we saw it with LeBron in Cleveland, where it was like, you know, just bring whoever LeBron likes and make them the coach, and that doesn't work out at the end of the day. You need a tactician, especially in this day and age. And honestly, Nick, Nikola Jokic absolutely destroyed the Clippers. And it wasn't even a show of force or show of athleticism. It was a show of basketball IQ. It was a show of just overall savvy. And to lose a series like that, I mean, let's. I'm going to give credit where credit's due, Nick. I think Denver is a good team, but do I think that they should have beat the Clippers or that the Clippers should have a free pass for losing? No. And now Paul George, our favorite, you know, playoff P himself, has come out and said, playoff P in the flesh, has said that, oh, this wasn't a playoff or bust year for us. You know, we're still, you know, we still believe in this team. And to me, that's a cop out because everyone knows. Everyone knows, Nick, when that whole thing happened with the Clippers, it was championship or bust, right? You brought in Kawhi and you traded all those assets for PG and you did all this stuff to keep the core around, and now it's not championship or bust. That's excuses to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. And they knew what the hype was when he was traded over to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You know, we knew what the hype was. We knew that this was, you know, oh, the Clippers are going all in, and oh, you know, they're winning the championship, and step aside Lakers because this is a Clippers town now.
Right.
This is our Staples Center now. It's time for us to put our championship up in there, and you came up short.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Don't sit there and try and make an excuse and say, oh well, we're trying to build and we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that because you came up short. No.
Yeah.
And again, a guy that's is going to get a free pass in this is kind of Kawhi Leonard. And I know Shannon Sharp really went on him the other week or so when they lost, and rightfully so, because everyone crowned Kawhi Leonard being the best player in the NBA, with everyone going and everyone talking and whatnot. And had this been LeBron, they would have burned LeBron at the stake.
Yeah.
How you suck, how you're not Mike, how you're this and that. But Kawhi got a free pass. And let me say this too, because this is what kind of kills me when it comes to free agents sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron James, since he went to Miami, now I might be wrong on this, but since he went to Miami, every year that LeBron James has been in the playoffs, he's been in the finals.
Oh wow. Yeah, because
Now,
he didn't make it for the Lakers, but
they didn't make the playoffs.
Exactly, but then also that broke a 5-year streak of him being in the playoffs, was it? Or I'm sorry, in the finals, was it? Because he had the last last 3 with Miami, and then he had 2 in a row with Cleveland. So you're right. The expectation, the bar is set so high for LeBron.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's how amazing. See, if we could take 5 seconds and let's just put the championships aside for 5 seconds,
right?
And let's really and let's stop the comparisons of Michael versus LeBron. If you could take 5 seconds and really understand on how great LeBron James really has been in his career, especially when he got that small taste of what it's really, because remember, he went to the finals when he was in Cleveland, but in my personal opinion, the only reason why when he was a young man in Cleveland was because the Detroit Pistons imploded, and when Rasheed Wallace loses his mind, that team went elsewhere.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when he got that real championship taste when he went to Miami, LeBron James has been nothing short of greatness.
Yeah.
Yes, he's lost finals. Okay, I know Michael hasn't lost finals before, but I don't care. But it's something. Look, if we could put Jim Kelly on a pedestal for a man that went to 4 straight Super Bowls, LeBron James deserves some kind of love for a guy who has gone to the finals for, what do we say now, 6 consecutive years that he's been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So ever since he was in Miami, every year he's been in the playoffs, he's made it to the finals, and it might jump up to 7, because there's no way I cannot see LeBron James and this team losing to the Denver Nuggets like the Clippers.
And honestly, it's funny, Nick, because the last time we spoke about this, it was fresh off the Game 1 loss to the Rockets. And I think both of us were looking at each other and said, is LeBron able to carry a team the way that we were so accustomed to seeing in Miami and Cleveland? And maybe we both of us start to question, is this the beginning of old LeBron, right? Because Game 1 against the Rockets, they lost that game pretty handily, and LeBron looked really uninvolved. And I think the timing of it happened on a Friday, and we came and we talked about it on a Saturday, and I think both of us were saying, I still think the Lakers have a good shot at this series, but man, LeBron looks a little different. And next thing you know, they rattle off those 4 straight wins against them, and now we're looking at them basically, another 3 games, 3 wins. I'm saying 3 games because I'm in agreement with you. After watching that game last night, Jokic can't do the same things to the Lakers that he could do to the Clippers.
Right.
AD has a lot to do with that, but also you have to remember, and I gave them a lot of flack for this, but the Lakers are a very long team. big team.
Yeah.
You know, they've got JaVale McGee. They've got Dwight Howard. They've got AD. LeBron is basically a center himself. So when you take a look at some of the length with the Clippers, I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. I like Montrezl Harrell, but he's what, 6'7"? He's not able to deal with these big and Jokic, let's make no mistake, I like him a lot, but he's not the most athletic guy in the world. He's not getting past you he's not dribbling past you. You know, he's doing he's making smart plays, and the Lakers seem to find a way to get him uninvolved. And when you do that, you know, Jamal Murray has to start chucking up some shots, and then you don't really have scorers after those too. I mean, you know, they rely on guys like Gary Harris and you know, even to a certain extent Michael Porter now, and that's going to be really tough for them. So I agree with you. I think right now the Lakers, all they have to do is really continue to get AD going the way that they have. Let's remember in that Portland series, AD sort of struggled, and he didn't have the type of flow that he wanted. And then, you know, with Houston, the big thing with Houston was that we talked about it. They have PJ Tucker and Robert Covington guarding AD. And let's remember, one of AD's strengths is that he's a big man, but he also can shoot. He can also dribble past you. He can also handle the ball and pass. So now when you start to see the game that he had yesterday, that's the dominant AD we're used to seeing. And I was also happy to see LeBron. There was a few times during the game where he looked at AD and gave him this look like, you know, start fucking, you know, dunk the ball, you know. And I think LeBron is just basically telling AD, you got to be the aggressor here, my man. And once they get that going, that's going to be really tough to stop.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And you know, and you know, I know you mentioned about AD struggling in that Portland series.
Yeah.
But that's how good defensive of a center that
Nurkic,
Yusuf Nurkic is.
Yeah.
You know, he's really good defensively. But I thought that there was a lot of overhype in that Houston series because it was a game one where AD struggled so bad off of PJ Tucker, and something had to go off, and I'm like, this fool is 6'7" and I'm 7 feet.
I'm just gonna take it
seriously. And then that light went on, and it was pretty much lights out after that. And speaking of the Houston Rockets, Mike D'Antoni said that he's not coming back to Houston, which you want to talk about another team that's a mess as far as I'm concerned. Dude, there is no type of structural plan.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Houston Rockets, I felt like they were one of those teams where it's like, okay, we have James Harden, but if you take James Harden out and you look at the rest of that team, where does the team make sense?
Yeah.
Like, for whatever reason, you were so gung-ho to get rid of Chris Paul that you ended up trading him for Russell Westbrook, when Russell Westbrook has already proven that he can't really function with another superstar on his team.
Yeah.
He couldn't get over the hump per se when he was in Oklahoma City. And then, you know, so much so that they ended up getting rid of Harden and he goes to Houston. And then KD just left on his own power. So what common sense would it make to say, well, let's bring in this guy. You have one guy that needs the ball in Harden. You have another guy that needs the ball in Westbrook.
Yeah.
When you technically had a pass-first guy in Chris Paul that for whatever reason you just had to get rid of. You trade Clint Capella. You try to play this small ball. None of it's worked. So where do the Houston Rockets really go from here?
Yeah, and the funny part, Nick, is that they spent the last 2 years catering this team to what Mike D'Antoni wants, and now he's not even their coach anymore. And now we're talking about a team that is thinking about trading Russell Westbrook for, you know, I saw some rumors of Blake Griffin trade with Detroit. I saw some rumors, you know, of possibly New York and some other options. And you know what's funny, Nick? You mentioned Chris Paul. How is it that Chris Paul's stock has risen and Russell Westbrook's stock has dropped? I mean, it's crazy. Now we're looking at CP3, and everyone's thinking he's going to be the savior for Milwaukee or the savior for the Knicks or the savior for one of these other teams in the West. And all of a sudden, you're starting to see that, man, the Rockets had the wrong idea, and now they have to dismantle this team because what can you – let me ask you, if you're a coach – and you are walking into that situation, this team has no centers on it. You have basically 8 guards and PJ Tucker. And to me, what you've done is you've put yourself in a hole where the next coach will almost have to be a GM and come in and almost say, listen, if you want me to be your coach, I've got to figure out what this roster is going to look like. And honestly, more power to Mike D'Antoni, because if you haven't heard, one of the big beasts with Mike D'Antoni was that he never heard back from the Fertittas, the owners of the Rockets, after the game. They basically talked about extensions the weeks leading up to that playoff series, and after they were eliminated, it was supposed to be sort of written in that he would be getting a phone call, and when he landed, he never got a phone call, and he took that as a sign of disrespect. And to me, if you're Mike D'Antoni, you've got to start to look inwards, right? Like, it hasn't worked in Phoenix, hasn't worked in New York, it's now hasn't worked in Houston, and you're going to start to look at, because there's other teams now, and including my team, which I'm very, very worried about the prospect that Mike D'Antoni will be the coach of the Bulls, because all this guy has proven throughout his career is, I'm going to play things my way, and if you don't do it my way, see you later. I don't want that type of coach on my team.
But let me say this too, though. I think the thing that kills Mike D'Antoni is having players who are mega superstars on his team. Like, if you look at those Phoenix teams, Steve Nash was a superstar, but he wasn't what you would consider a quote unquote selfish superstar.
I mean, Dallas let him walk. Remember, he had an amazing career in Dallas, and they let him walk.
Yep. And they let him walk, and he went to Phoenix with that system. Think about it. Amari Stoudemire, when he was coming up, was a star, but he wasn't really a selfish superstar.
Yeah, Sean Marion.
You're right. You had Sean Marion, who, at the time was playing like a monster.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a selfish star. So I feel like, and it happened in New York before they traded for
Amari?
What's his name, for Carmelo.
Oh, Carmelo.
Because remember, Stephon Marbury was on that team, and him and Mike D'Antoni didn't get along.
Yeah, that's right.
But when they got rid of when Stephon Marbury more or less stepped away, look at the team they had. It was Raymond Felton, Amari Stoudemire, Danilo Gallinari. I'm trying to think. There was a couple other guys that was on that team.
Was J.R. Smith on that
Jared
team?
Jeffries but it was like Amari was the star, and then there was a bunch of complementary pieces that worked well with the system.
Yeah.
But then the minute when Carmelo comes in, then it's 50 shots for Melo, and he's a superstar, and you got to cater to this guy. And I don't think Mike D'Antoni works well with that. That's why I think Chicago would not be too bad of a spot, because you don't have that guy. Zach LaVine's really good, but he's not selfish. I need $50 million a year and 50 shots good.
Yeah. You know what I'm worried about, though, Nick? What I'm worried about with D'Antoni is this. As a Bulls fan, you have to be honest about the current scenario and the current situation that we're in. We're in a situation right now where our best players on the team are probably not going to be here in the next couple of years. You're in a position right now where this is a huge transition for the Bulls. The moves that they've made over the last couple of years, let's be honest, that Jimmy Butler trade didn't work out well for us. We got Zach LaVine, who, again, a great player, Chris Dunn, and Lauri Markkanen. All three of these guys will probably not be on this team next year. So, to me, if you're looking for D'Antoni to come in, what you're really asking him to be is a GM. And I'm scared of that prospect. I don't want him assembling my team. I would love for him, you know what I would love? I would love for him to step in and say, okay, we have a new GM who came from Denver. We have a new basketball operations guy. Let them do their thing and have them cater the team to your scenario or to your system. But if you want to come in and start building teams, I don't know, man. It didn't work out too well for New York. Didn't work out too well for Houston. And quite frankly, for a team that's in basketball hell, I don't know if we can afford that right now.
Legit. So what are your thoughts maybe on like a Billy Donovan for some whatever reason Oklahoma City didn't want to bring him back?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think it was the same scenario for Billy Donovan. I think Billy Donovan felt disrespected by OKC because, for all that he's done for that franchise, I know he's only been there for a few years, but last year was really tough for Oklahoma City. And remember, everybody walking into the season was like, Oklahoma City is going to be a walkover team. They're going to trade CP3. CP3 might not even want to play with them. And next thing you know, they're in the playoffs. playoffs, and they're actually, again, they were a really, really tough out for Houston. So to me, Billy Donovan makes a lot of sense. He's also a former college coach, right? So having young players and then having more young assets in the future, it makes a lot of sense. To me, though, really, and I think I've said this on the show before, I don't think it really matters who the coach is if the team and the players on the court is the level is so low. And right now, if you look at the Bulls, top of the team, you've got a bunch of journeymen at the bottom, but then you've got Zach LaVine, you got Lauri Markkanen, you got Kobe White, you got some of these young guys that have been drafted the last few years. There's no real cohesive unit on this team yet. And what they're hoping to do, and again, the draft is coming up here, and we'll see what the Bulls do. The Bulls still don't have a coach, so I'm assuming right now that they're waiting on Donovan and maybe waiting on the playoffs to end. I don't mind Billy Donovan, but my problem with that is I think the problem is bigger than Billy Donovan, because if you ask Billy Donovan to come in here and do what he did in OKC, let's remember what they did in OKC, Nick. They traded their two best players. They said, you know what, okay, we're not going to be able to do this. We're trading our two best players. We're getting assets. If the Bulls want to do that, I'd like to see what we're getting back in return, because Zach LaVine, let me ask you, Nick, are the Knicks going to trade tremendous assets for Zach LaVine right now? No. But let me tell you, he's got 1 year left. I mean, if you extend him, but I'm saying you got 1 year left. If the guy could walk after a year, you're not going to trade assets for him.
Dude, this is the same team that I keep seeing rumors are talking about trading Kevin Knox, Elfrid Payton, some other jabroni, the 2 picks that we got from Dallas, and God knows what, all for Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Dude, no. Can we stop?
That's a lot.
It is insanity, bro. And on top of that, and Knicks fans drive me nuts, because I don't know why Knicks fans expected Kevin Knox to come in and be this world burner and score 30 points a game and be the savior of the Knicks, when we're a team that's had maybe some of the worst coaching in all of NBA history. Dude, David Fizdale didn't work out. You had Mike Miller, who is a good story, did well with the team, but, it's not. But you're bringing in Tom Thibodeau. And by the way, you're bringing back Mike Woodson, who should have never been fired as Knicks head coach in the first damn place for offensive plays, right?
Yeah.
That's right up Kevin Knox's alley.
Sure.
So why do we keep trying to give up on this young kid when he has not been properly coached to be, a good NBA player?
Yeah.
It drives me up a wall. Everyone's like, oh, I hate Kevin Knox, blah, blah, blah. Let me see what he can do under Woodson and Thibodeau, and maybe he can finally become the star instead of trading him for 36-year-old Chris Paul and watch him flourish in OKC. And then we're like, well, there goes another player the Knicks gave up on that was good.
Yeah, to me, Nick, that's a great point, but it's also one of those things where the Knicks seem to be stuck in this pattern of, we have to win now. We have to win now. It has to be this year. Okay, you know what? Last year was last year, but now we're going to put together the super team, and it's going to be great this year. And that's just not how it works. Franchises like ours have to call a spade a spade. You got to look in the mirror and say, I'm fucked up. I've got to figure out what I'm doing here before I start to think about winning, right? So with the Knicks, you're in a position now where you have a bunch of young pieces that could possibly flourish here over the next couple of years and have the upside. And also on top of that, you've got financial flexibility, right? So when you're looking at the Bulls, they don't have that. We don't have these young guys that you can look at and say, wow, that person's going to be great in 2 years. Kobe White is a great player, but do I think he's going to be a superstar level, top 5 pick, living up to the expectations? Probably not. I think he's a guy who's going to be a really good offensive player someday and maybe even a good combo guard off the bench for a championship team. But is he going to be a person that's going to eventually flourish into this crazy, productive starter? Probably not. Whereas, the Knicks, they've got 3 or 4 or 5 pieces right now where they said, you know what, if we let those sit for 2 years or a year, these guys can really flourish. And what I'm thinking with the Knicks right now is, that whole CP3 deal makes sense if the return is right, right? So you can't say give me 5 of your best, 5 of your young players and 3 picks for Chris Paul, when in reality Chris Paul, he's not worth that at this point. I mean, we saw we saw how great of a season he has, but let me tell you this, Milwaukee, I mean, the deal that I saw floating for Milwaukee to Oklahoma City wasn't that great. I mean, the deal, I think, DiVincenzo and a couple of big contracts and some draft picks to OKC for Chris Paul. And now you're asking the Bulls to give up, first round picks and these youth players, and you're asking the Knicks to give up most of their core. That doesn't make sense. I think both of our teams really are in a position right now, and yours in specific, because, again, a good free agent class for you can really change things.
Exactly. And the only thing that I want the Knicks to do is I don't know how they're going to do it, but they got to move up in the draft, because I'm trying to see these scenarios on if there's any good way that we could probably try and move up to get maybe a decent top 5 player. I don't know, dude. It's a crapshoot after 6. So hopefully the Knicks can somehow maybe bring out a package because I still think LaMelo Ball to New York makes a lot of sense, but there's no way he falls past 4 if the Bulls even go in that direction to get LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of the fans want him, but at the same time, you are going to have to factor in LeVar.
Yeah.
As stupid as I think that is, it's that's going to be a factor.
Yeah.
And, it's up to the new regime on, as you mentioned, how they feel about Kobe White.
Yeah.
Is he the future? Can he be that guy? If we do, let's say if we do take LaMelo, we're not going to carry 2 point guards that are both starters. So what kind of package can we get for Kobe White? Do they try and trade him? It's a lot of questions that are like you said, it's going into the draft that's coming up here and within the next month or so. So, it's very interesting, but I also wanted to, shout out to everyone that's listening, but specifically to Keith Robbins. Christian, I'll get to your comment here in a sec. But Keith Robbins said, "How's my Heat? Here's how I feel about your Heat. F the Miami Heat. And have everything the Miami Heat ever stands for, okay? I wasn't mad at LeBron for leaving Cleveland. I was pissed that he joined those jackasses. Of all the teams in the NBA, there's 3 teams, 2 specifically, that I can't stand when it comes to the NBA. And it's the Bulls, Heat, and Pacers. They're really the biggest rivals to the Knicks.
Yeah.
At the end of the day with me growing up.
Yeah.
So when I see the Miami Heat being up 2-0 on the great coached Boston Celtics and how they blew a 17-point lead is beyond me. F the Miami Heat. Guys, so think about it like this, bro. I was thinking, first off, if you're the NBA, if you're looking at ratings-wise, you cannot afford, I'm not saying they're rigging it or anything, but you cannot afford the Denver Nuggets to make the NBA.
Yeah, I was just about to say
there is no scenario, because think about it.
Yeah.
Lakers versus Celtics, it's the classic rivalry, storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Lakers versus Heat, it's kind of the equivalent of when the Lakers took on the Pistons, when a lot of people didn't think that them 80s Pistons was going to beat those Boston Celtics teams.
Yeah.
And they did. So that Lakers Heat can be like Lakers Pistons. Nobody is watching Nuggets versus Heat or Nuggets versus Celtics unless you really love the NBA. That's boring. No one's going to want to watch that. It's almost, and I'll go ahead and say this. I personally think that the NHL had a disservice in back-to-back years that the Rangers and Blackhawks didn't meet up. Because you're talking about 2 original 6 teams
right.
that are going for Lord Stanley's prestigious cup. And one year the Blackhawks didn't cooperate, and then the year after that the Rangers didn't cooperate.
Yeah.
And I think that they lost big time on meetings, because you're talking about the number 1 and 3 markets in the sports world in New York and Chicago.
Yeah.
Everybody and their mama's going to watch that.
Yeah.
And then I think if you go back a little bit further from there, when the Cubs blew that series lead against the Marlins in the infamous Steve Bartman game, I think Major League Baseball got hurt because you're going to have New York take on Chicago again in the World Series.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to market the Florida Marlins, who luckily enough won that World Series, but it's hard to market that.
And then they dismantle the team every time they win. They just dismantle the team.
Yeah, exactly. They did it again. So that's why I'm saying I think ratings-wise, me personally, I will never root for LeBron James as hard as I'm going to root for LeBron James in the next month. Because the last thing that I need to hear are Miami Heat jackass fans going around to we're the champs. Screw y'all. And I definitely don't want to hear none of these Boston morons talking about, we're still the city of champions. LeBron James, please do everybody a favor and please win the NBA championship.
Let's be honest, though, Nick. Let's be honest. The NBA is desperate for this to be a Lakers-Celtics. They are desperate. I mean, the idea that they can start to stoke some of the fires of previous matchups of the Lakers and the Celtics and bring up the Magic versus Bird stuff and just, it writes itself, right? So sometimes when you look at it, though, especially when it comes to the Celtics, and this is a good transition because I'm glad we started talking about the Heat, because Boston, man, listen, don't get me wrong. I love me a tactician. I love me a guy who can sit on the bench, draw up plays, and create points and create momentum for his team based on strategy. But Brad Stevens, to me, over the last couple of series, has looked different. First of all, obviously no Gordon Hayward for them, but let's be honest. This team looks like they can play without him. They don't need Gordon Hayward to get to the next level. What we're seeing now, though, is that it's really hard to match up with Miami the way that Boston wants to match up with them. Meaning, they are assuming that Jimmy Butler is the only scoring option there, right? And what we're seeing now is Goran Dragic is coming out and scoring, Tyler Hero, you got Duncan Robinson, you got Bam Adebayo with that huge block in Game 1 that basically changed the makeup of the series. So Miami has a lot of playmakers, and what you're starting to see is that the team that Miami built, and Pat, again, we credit Pat Riley pretty much every single show, but credit to Pat Riley. Because what he did was he moved on from the LeBron stuff. We're still seeing the after effects of Toronto moving on from Kawhi. We're still seeing the after effects of Cleveland, or LeBron moving on from Cleveland. And we haven't seen that from Miami over the last couple of years. They just continue to be competitive. They didn't have the greatest product or the greatest team since LeBron left, but they're consistently in it. And Eric Spoelstra, man, does he use that depth, because I know he shortened his lineup a little bit. So instead of playing Andre Iguodala and Kendrick Nunn, he basically said, listen, we got 7 guys. We're going to play our best 7 guys, and we know these guys are going to be hard to match up with. And Boston, Brad Stevens is overthinking a little bit. They don't have – one thing that I'm bothered by about Boston is they didn't even think about bringing in a big man. They lost Al Horford, and I think the thought process was, well, we can play small and play athletic. And you're starting to see that Bam Adebayo is huge right now because he's scoring, but also on the defensive side, he can switch off. And they have a lot of perimeter defenders too. So Miami's dangerous, but you have to start to look at Boston and say, maybe Brad Stevens isn't. I don't want to say like, oh, he's not Phil Jackson, because obviously he's not Phil Jackson, right? But I think the thought process is the guy built this team. He is the architect of this team. He's the one who went out of his way to keep Jaylen Brown around. He's the one who went out of his way to make sure that Kemba was the guy to replace Kyrie. And let's be honest, Kemba hasn't played well at all either. So, Brad Stevens has to look inwards after this. This can't be another one of those things where, okay, we'll just go into next year and try it all over again. No, Boston has to start to think about things if they lose this series.
Most definitely. I'm going to get to some of these comments.
Please.
Christian, I'm going to get to your baseball comments here in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
He did say earlier that he would rather have. Where is it at? He said he would rather have.
He'd rather have. He'd rather have Donovan
Billy
or
Donovan
or Becky Hammond. Yeah, and I agree with him.
And then he also said that rumors that he was hearing was that the T-Wolves want Levine back and are willing to trade their number one this year and Culver along with 2 other first-round lottery.
You're talking about the number 1 overall pick?
That's what he said.
Listen. Who said that, Christian?
Yeah.
Hey, Christian, I will drive Zach LaVine to O'Hare myself. I'll do. You know what? I'll drive him to Minnesota. Listen. I'll clean my car. He could get in the back. We'll make it like an Uber ride. Because if Minnesota is on enough crack to sell the number 1 pick and multiple number 1 picks and Culver, a former number 1 pick for Zach LaVine, I'll pack his bags right now.
Yeah, Minnesota would be on crack to make that kind of deal.
You can't. Listen, if that makes sense if you're giving up Culver and maybe a couple future ones, but to give up the number 1 overall pick to get back a guy that you traded, pretty easily before, I don't see that happening.
Right. Keith says Miami is just too deep. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Derek says Boston is still the city of champions, but he doesn't think that the Celtics will be in the finals. Who knows? Yeah, other than that, we got nothing but baseball comments. But yeah, dude, screw the Miami Heat. And I say that from the depths of my heart. They kiss my ass. That's why I'm wearing my Knicks shirt today. Let everybody know, screw the Miami Heat. And then but yeah, no, they've looked good. And even as much as I can't stand the Heat, I've given major credit where credit is due. And I think Eric Spoelstra is really just showing his ass. And I don't mean that in any way like as a diss. But what I am saying is, for everyone that thought that LeBron James was the one that was coaching the team, and Eric Spoelstra is just there to be there, done a pretty damn good job for a guy that many people were saying is a smart coach.
Yeah.
Remember when they lost the first finals to Dallas? Everyone's like, "Oh, Pat," because remember when Miami won their first championship, they fired Stan Van Gundy, and then Pat Riley came and coached, and they ended up winning the NBA championship that year against Dallas.
Yeah.
And then when it happened again, when they lost to Dallas, everyone's like, "Oh, Eric Spoelstra's gonna get fired, and Pat Riley needs to come back down because he needs to coach this team, this and that." And Pat Riley was like, "Dude, I believe in Eric Spoelstra," and they went on to win 2 championships, and they're en route for a 3rd one. So, Eric Spoelstra, has always been a smart coach, and you're seeing it now. And he's proven that he didn't need LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to make no big 3 for them to potentially go back to the finals.
Yeah.
So big ups to Eric Spoelstra, but that still doesn't mean that I'm still not going to say screw the Miami.
And honestly, I don't think the series is over. I hear a lot of people overcalculating right now and saying, "Oh, it's over." The problem with that is there's no home court advantage anymore. So we saw it with Denver. When you don't have momentum, when you're up 3-1, Nick, the momentum is what carries you in usual series because you're going to go back home for at least one, and you're going to have that momentum to go with it. But when you go up 3-1 in this current circumstance, there's no momentum that goes into it. We've seen it with 2 series with Denver, and we've seen teams come out flat, and that honestly, it has a lot to do with coaching. So yeah, I agree with you, and Keith said Spoelstra's underrated. He was overshadowed by the LeBron era. Absolutely. I think, we talk about it, we talk about it a lot on this show about how people clown Spoelstra and how this guy used to be a video, he used to be a video guy. And next thing you know, he was a head coach. And they always said he's just a yes man for LeBron and D Wade and Bosh. And now we're seeing it's way more than that. And Heat players love playing for him. And also, Nick, it's very ballsy. One thing before we move on here, I just want to point out how ballsy Miami has been. From the LeBron era to now, they have not wavered in what their goal was. They didn't have to go out and get Jimmy Butler this year. Let's be honest with each other. Jimmy Butler was who knows, but I know for a fact that Jimmy Butler playing with Dwayne Wade in Chicago and Dwayne Wade telling him about Miami, and there's some rumors going around that basically Jimmy knew he was going to Miami. When he went to Philadelphia, he basically told everybody in the locker room, I'm done here. I know where I'm going next. And a lot of that has to do with Pat Riley. A lot of that has to do with the ballsiness of the organization. And the reason why I say ballsiness is Tyler Hero, rookie. Duncan Robinson, very young player. Bam Adebayo, pretty young player himself. You got the core of this team is made up of some really young guys who are contributing right away. You've got to give credit where credit is due to Miami, and hopefully by this time next week we'll be talking about hopefully a finals, and who knows what we're going to be talking about exactly. But Keith said, all my teams are great right now. Lightning in the finals, Heat on the verge of the finals, and Rays running the AL. Yeah, I don't know about the Rays running the AL, bro. You're going to have to get through the White Sox.
I would calm all the way down.
Yeah, you're going to have to get through the White Sox on that one.
Overtook, just got red hot, and we are coming for that ass. Do not get complacent quite yet.
Well, Nick, tell us about, because the Yankees, the tides have turned really hard in the last 2 weeks. Give us your perspective on it. What's changed?
You ever seen the movie The Replacements?
Oh, one of my favorites, Keanu. Yeah.
Okay.
You
remember that scene when Keanu was on the boat and a buddy was playing terrible, and they kept saying they kept asking Gene Hackman what's the team need to do to turn it around, and he kept saying heart. That's all he would say.
Heart.
And
yeah.
I put that on my Facebook, that exact scene, because somewhere the Yankees lost their heart. I don't know why, and I'm not using it like injuries has something to do with it.
Yeah.
But this is the same team who last year was playing the whole next man up game when they just lost their heart. They were losing games terribly to the Rays. And I'm not trying to diss the Rays. The Rays are a good baseball team.
Yeah.
But the way they were losing those games to the Rays and the way they were losing to the Orioles, and then the Yankees sunk to a brand new low when they got beat by Toronto. I think they lost 3 or 4 in Toronto. They did.
Yeah.
But the one game when they were up, I think they were up like 6-2, and Adam Ottavino comes in and gets absolutely mopped, and then they say, well, the lighting's bad, and I think we were tipping our pitches due to the bad lighting. Dude, how about you just say we suck?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, dude, stop making excuses now.
Yeah.
Pitching a baseball, hitting a baseball. See, the one thing that kills me about the Yankees, and they kind of did it. It almost cost them yesterday. But they live and die on the home run so bad that there are times where, okay, if I have a guy like Tyler Wade, if I have Clint Frazier who has speed, if I have Aaron Hicks who has speed, if I have Brett Gardner if he's out there, he has speed, why are the Yankees not stealing bases and being more aggressive? The Red Sox almost won that game yesterday because they were doing just that. They knew the Yankees were too slow to home plate. So what were they doing? Aggressive on the base path. Make them make a pitch that's bogus. Make them make a pitch that's down the middle of the plate so you can swing 450 feet.
Yeah.
And somewhere, I don't know what happened, they got healthy. Giancarlo came back. Aaron Judge came back. Zach Britton came back. Deivi Garcia has been a shot in the arm. And all of a sudden, the Yankees have won 9 games in a row. Now, the only reason why we haven't made any games, per se, up on the Rays is because they're beating the Baltimore Orioles, who suck.
Yeah.
And that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to beat the Baltimore Orioles.
Right, yeah.
So I think the Yankees, to me, right now, with the way that they're going, because they got 2 more against the Red Sox, we got 4 more against Toronto, and then we finish at home against the Marlins. This Yankees team reminds me so much of the 2013 Colorado Rockies, who 2 weeks left in the season were almost left dead in the water. They were like 4 games out of the wild card, and people didn't think they were going to come back. And not only did they come back and win the second wild card, but then they ended up going all the way to the World Series when they ended up eventually losing to the Boston Red Sox. So the Yankees have gotten healthy, but then they've gotten back to remembering what it's like to win. That's why I think DJ LeMahieu, when this is all said and done, the Yankees need to pay DJ LeMahieu because DJ is not your typical leadoff hitter. You know, the funny thing about DJ LeMahieu, there's 2 funny things about him. When the Yankees picked him up, he wasn't even on Cashman's radar.
No, he wasn't a superstar level guy when they picked him up, right? He was a journeyman guy, and he came in and just killed the world.
And think about it. He was hitting over 300, but a lot of people were saying, oh, that's because Colorado's air,
right.
The ball travels, the West isn't that great, blah, blah, blah. And DJ LeMahieu, all he did last year was hit over 330 and had 30 home runs out of the leadoff spot. And I personally thought he should have won MVP over Mike Trout. And he's doing it again this year where he's batting over 350. But look at the game last night. 2 on. He's got another chance to come up and extend his hitting streak. And what does DJ do best that most Yankees don't do? Tries to go the opposite way. And he hit an oppo that gave him the lead. Eventually they get the win. So, you know, DJ needs to get paid because he means so much to this Yankees team. And, you know, another thing that I think with Aaron Boone is now the lineups are starting to make sense. Like, no offense, and I've been saying this for a long time, there's all this hype about the New York Yankees farm system, but we don't play none of these guys consistently.
Yeah.
Like, why do you keep bringing up Clint Frazier if you're not going to play him? Dude, Brett Gardner's 50 years old. Play Clinton left.
Yeah.
And he's playing consistently in left. And the guy that you need to platoon, if he's not going to give you any production, is Aaron flipping Hicks. If Aaron Hicks is not going to hit at the plate, put Brett Gardner in there.
Yeah.
Stop taking Clint Frazier out.
And honestly, Nick, I have to admit, a lot of this sounds like some of the bullshit that teams go through when it comes to analytics. So, like, when you're talking about why don't teams steal more or why don't teams handle speed a little bit differently, a lot of that has to do with some of these new analytics guys who come into the league, and they're saying, well, if there's a 73.4% chance that if you were to steal a base and get caught, then you've lost the game. You know, there's so many new metrics added, and especially like when it comes to Aaron Hicks, that's a great example. He is a really, he's a positive WAR player when he's playing out in the field. Tremendous fielder, great arm. But when he's not hitting, is he the guy that you want manning that position? Well, the analytics will tell you his defense is so good that he has to be in there. But if you're a manager of a baseball team, you also have to make a decision to say, even though analytically this looks good, is this what's best for the team? So,
right.
You know, one thing that I will say is the White Sox are a great example of this. Rick Renteria is a former manager who loved to play small ball. Remember, he was the coach of he was a manager of the Cubs for a year, and he loves the small ball game. He likes speed on the base pass, bunting guys over, productive outs, sac flies, and more now the analytics are starting to show that's all bullshit. You give away an out, it's not good. If you are, there's no such thing as bunting a guy over anymore when you have 5 guys who can hit home runs in the next 5 spots. So that's another thing that really bothers me about the league now is analytics has sort of crept into to territory that I'm not comfortable with, which is the manager still has to manage. And I don't want somebody in the box who has a laptop in front of him telling me how to manage my team based on those numbers.
I'm with you on that. And I'm glad you brought up that bunting because it was that analytical no bunting BS that cost us a game against the Rays. Like, I think it was like maybe 3 weeks or so ago, where the Yankees have guys on first and second with 1 out with Brett Gardner up there who has the ability, even if he does bunt, to even beat out the bunt. And he's up there trying to hit a 3-run home run. Dude, for what? Yeah. This man has speed, and Gio Urshela is up next, who can get clutch hits.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have Gio up there getting clutch hits, with guys on second and third, maybe 2 outs, or even if the base is loaded with 1 out, then Brett Gardner out there trying to swing for the fences and looks terrible in 3 pitches.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that, dude. It's like, look, I understand the game has changed, but if bunting a guy over gets us to win, can we please do that? And I think that's what it ultimately cost Joe Girardi his job, because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, his voice in the locker room was getting stale. Dude, they went to Game 7 of the ALCS.
Yeah.
The problem was that the Yankees and Brian Cashman and Randy Levine and all these guys, the president of the Yankees, for whatever reason, thought that the old way that they were doing it wasn't working. And now here's the new way that we're going to do it. And Joe's just not hip to the new way that we're going to do it. So this is what we're going to do. And it's like, dude, for what, dude? You're worried about a percentage play with these young Yankees that – think about that season. We weren't supposed to beat the Twins in the playoff game to most people. Then we for damn sure weren't supposed to beat the Indians in 5 games the way we did. And we for damn sure weren't supposed to go all the way to Game 7 of the ALCS to the Houston Astros. So
the cheating ass Astros.
Them cheating ass Astros. And then I got to look at that crap all down here.
You got to look at the billboards.
It's disgusting. Dude, I found a Yankees mask at Burlington Coat Factory. Yeah. And I bought that bad boy. And I wear it proudly everywhere I go.
Christian Randall. Christian Randall.
One lady, she goes.
Go ahead.
She's like, you can't dash with that mask on. I was like, watch me with your cheating asses and walk dead out of here.
Oh, she's saying you're not going to get tips or something like that. Like, I don't give
It's too late. She already put it on there. You can't renege the tip.
Right, yeah. You already put that in. Sorry, lady. Christian Randall, thanks for chatting with us. He said, who wins AL MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year? I mean, I think you pretty much hit it on the head, Christian. Abreu MVP, Luis Robert Rookie of the Year, Garrett Cole, Cy Young. One thing that I will say is Luis Robert has really struggled over the last 5 games, and Kyle Lewis, who's the next closest guy in Seattle, he's had a couple pretty good games. But the White Sox right now are flying high. Officially, for the first time in 12 years, are in the playoffs. So, trusting the process has been a really, really tough thing for the White Sox. Like, as a White Sox fan, I've sort of thrown my hands up as of 5 years ago and said, I'm just going to let this team do their thing and see how they do. And they've proven time and time again that they understand what it's going to take to build a winning team. And this isn't even this team's final form, to borrow some Dragon Ball Z to borrow some Dragon Ball Z terminology. This team is still an infant in terms of potential. Let's remember, Jose Abreu is one of the best players in the league. He's never played winning baseball with this team. I mean, as sad as it is for me to say, as soon as Paul left and he arrived, he has been on consistently bad teams, and he's been literally the only player on most of those teams that's worth anything. And now he's here in an MVP season. He is hitting the cover off the ball, and he's got guys in front of him that can basically get on base at a really high clip. And now we're starting to see the pitching come around. So the White Sox are in a tremendous position right now. They haven't wrapped up the Central quite yet because Minnesota is still in it. Cleveland, after they traded Clevenger, they just went down in the ranks. And it's crazy because, honestly, man, the one team I'm surprised by, Nick, and maybe you can tell me a little bit more about this because you've seen them more than I have, but Toronto. Toronto seems like a team you don't want to see in a shortened series in the playoffs. They've got sneaky players.
Yeah, but you know what? Let's see how Toronto rebounds after the 18 home runs that they just gave up in Yankee Stadium over the last 3 games. But you're right, dude. Toronto's actually really good. The only question with Toronto is going to be their starting pitching. Right. I think their lineup with Biggio and Bichette and Vlad Jr.
Teoscar Hernandez. Yeah, they've got like 3 guys, Nick, that came out of nowhere to be world beaters.
Yep, exactly. But But again, their question is 100% going to be their pitching staff overall. That's starting and bullpen. It's been good enough for them to get to third place, and I think they're like maybe 7th or 8th in the American League as far as seedings wise. But yeah, no, they're going to be a tough out, bro. But I'll tell you what, where Christian is wrong, though, is I would not give the Cy Young to Garrett Cole.
He struggled the last couple weeks, huh?
Yeah, he's been giving up a lot of home runs this year. What's his name? I think has better numbers. That might be a leading candidate.
Bieber?
Is Shane Bieber in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I think he might be in line for the Cy Young more than Garrett Cole is this year. But Garrett Cole has been pitching better now that they've been putting what's his name? Kyle Higashioka behind Gary Sanchez. And I'm going to tell you what, man. Gary Sanchez right now, as far as I'm concerned, is playing for his job. And I mean this in a sense of JT Realmuto, who the Yankees almost traded for last year with the Marlins, is only on a 1-year deal in Philadelphia.
Right.
And if Gary Sanchez doesn't either get his defense or his bat together, I know he had a clutch home run yesterday, but if you've looked at Gary Sanchez as a whole this year, it's been a struggle. And you're going to tell me that you can see a guy at JT Realmuto who can hit 300 and play 18 times better defense than Gary Sanchez can, and the Yankees won't cough up the dough to pay him and trade Gary Sanchez in a heartbeat? Dude, it's a wrap, because no offense to Gary Sanchez, what sucks for him is that as long as Giancarlo is a Yankee, that DH spot is not given to anyone. If we didn't have Giancarlo, I'd have been like, just make Gary Sanchez a DH,
right?
And it's a wrap, and then we'll go sign Realmuto, which probably would have been done already. But because you have Giancarlo and he's still kind of a liability in the outfield, and because you're really not, I would even say this. I would say this. Because the Yankees find themselves at a crossroad because James Paxton is down for the year with whatever forearm / elbow / arm issues that he's having. And I think James Paxton never should have come back this year, because if you watched him pitch, his fastball never hit above 94. James Paxton usually hits around 98. So I knew something about him wasn't right.
Yeah.
And if the Yankees, because I don't know if you read this, Miguel Andujar's agent came out against the Yankees earlier this week, saying that they feel like that they've been manipulating his playing time. Here's what sucks about Miguel Andujar, though. Gio Urshela came around, who's a 50 times better
defensive
defender than Miguel Andujar. And where are you going to put Miguel Andujar? You can't DH him.
Can't put him at first.
Left because Clinton is playing well in left.
Yeah.
You're not going to put him at third. You're not going to put him over LeMahieu or Wade
or Voit.
Glaber in between shortstop and second.
Yeah.
And Luke Voigt's tearing the ball off at first.
Yeah.
So where are you going to put him?
Yeah, that's tough. And listen, I feel for Andujar, but let's be honest. Teams do this shit all the time. We can't victimize Andujar or villainize the Yankees for this. But one thing I think that was funny that you mentioned, which is the defensive catcher. And one thing that, it's been a while since the White Sox have had tremendous defensive catchers. And we saw that the first move this team made this offseason was Yasmani Grandal. And a lot of people looked around and said, why did we do that? James McCann just made an all-star team. He's one of the best defensive play callers as far as our pitching is concerned. And a lot of people were worried. We have 3 catchers, and Zach Collins is one of our best prospects, and he's a catcher, and he doesn't have a second position. So now you basically got Abreu, Encarnacion, Grandal, and McCann for 3 spots in your lineup. You got a DH, you got a first baseman, you got a catcher. But we have 2 of the top 10 defensive catchers in the league, and I'm telling you that has a lot to do with why our pitching is doing really well. Lucas Giolito will tell you that. Dylan Cease, the young guy, will tell you that. Most of these guys are telling you that the framing is above average for pretty much every single pitch that they have, and the play calling has been tremendous. The bats actually, and there's a lot of people, I'll be honest with you, Nick, James McCann has outplayed Yasmani Grandal this year. I mean, it's hard to say because we paid the guy and he's here, but Yasmani Grandal has had ups and downs, and I believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that he is a full-time catcher. He wants to be a catcher, but the problem is James McCann is so good back there, you have to have him back there. And Lucas Giolito threw a no-hitter with him behind the plate. How can you not put him there? So defensive catchers is a very big thing, and it's funny that you mentioned that because Gary Sanchez, I mean, it's power or nothing with him, right? It's like either you get that power out of him or you get nothing, and you can't have that. We've seen it with guys like Adam Dunn and Chris Davis and some of these other guys that were world beaters for years and years and years, and next thing you know, they lose that power, and it's over for them.
Yeah, dude, and that's all. It's because, I mean, I saw something the other day. Gary Sanchez went 2 for 4 yesterday. Which included the game-tying home run that got him in the extras. But at one point, Gary Sanchez had more home runs than he had, he had 15 hits, but of the 15 hits, 8 of them were home runs.
So half of his hits are home runs.
Absolute insanity, dude.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's not sustainable.
Right, exactly. So it was pretty much feast or famine.
Yeah.
As far as the as far as Gary Sanchez is concerned. But again, dude, something's gonna have to give, because for whatever reason, a lot of these home runs that Garrett Cole were giving up was when Gary Sanchez was calling.
Right.
And if you look over Garrett Cole's last 3 starts since he's been pitching better, it's all been under Higashioka, who's the backup catcher to Gary Sanchez.
Yeah.
So Gary's got to understand that his job's on the line, because if Higgy's playing well as a backup, and the Yankees really coveted JT Realmuto, and the Yankees are not scared to shovel out cash. So, if Gary doesn't get it together, plus that Miguel Andujar might have a foot out, and the Yankees could use him and Sanchez and maybe another piece. And that's another thing too, man. The Yankees playing the kids. Davy Garcia. Yeah. We've been hearing so many years about how Davy Garcia is so good, this and that. He pitched one game, I think it was against, I want to say it was either the Rays or the Orioles, and I can't remember, and he pitched really well. And then they sent him down because basically he was just a spot starter. Yeah. But then James Paxton goes down. You call him up again against Toronto, and ever since that game against Toronto a week and a half ago, the Yankees haven't lost since. Yeah. So, man, you got to play the kids, dude. Like, all this, I'm glad that the Yankees are done with that whole spot starter,
veterans only.
Yeah, dude. All that crap. You have 5 legit quality starters, and you still got Severino that's going to be on the way back next year, and we will see, because James Paxton can opt to be a free agent next year, but I don't know.
What about Domingo Herman? Where's Domingo Herman at now?
Domingo Herman at right now is kind of just getting himself together.
Because he got suspended, right?
Yeah, he got suspended. He was eligible to come back, but he said in Spanish on his Instagram or something that he was stepping away from baseball for a little while to get stuff together. So it must be things going on
some personal
at home
stuff
with Domingo, and the Yankees are like, look, take all the time you need. When you're ready to come back, you definitely got a spot. But remember, Tanaka is a free agent after this year, and
that's good for the Yankees, because that's some money coming off that they could use in other places.
Huge $25 million coming off for Tanaka. So yeah, dude. But speaking of Japanese pitchers, and I don't know if you saw me say this on my Facebook earlier in the week. I think it was yesterday, as a matter of fact. But I was talking to a friend on Facebook, and he had put up this picture of said, "What's going on, bro?" Of the top 3 Cy Young candidates for the National League, which right now is Trevor Bauer, Jacob deGrom and Yu Darvish out of anywhere. And I kept thinking, I was like, dude, why is Yu Darvish really pitching so well this year outside of being healthy? And I remember him saying, because I think we clowned him on a show last year where he went out and admitted that he did not like being booed.
Right.
When he
it put him in a bad headspace to get booed and to have fans not like him. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember my exact quote when I read that was, Chicago was the wrong place for you, especially on the north side, was the wrong place for you to sign if that's how you felt.
Yeah.
Now we're in a part where there's no fans in the game, and Yu Darvish is out here looking like the stud that everyone thought that he was going to be when, he came out of Japan.
Yeah.
And I mean, Yu looks great, bro.
He looks Cy Young worthy.
Yes, very Cy Young worthy.
Yeah.
And one friend was like, obviously brought up the health bit, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's true. But then another friend brought up the fact of, he was saying how now
no fans.
Not so much the fans, but there was a lot of talks about why you was getting hit in the World Series.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You get the cheating,
tipping of pitches, and right.
And then you get the Cub fans not booing the piss out of him when he's playing, when he's pitching terribly. And his numbers are as comparable to Jacob deGrom, who many consider the best pitcher in the National League, if not the best pitcher in all of baseball. So, man, tip out to, I tip my hat to, what's his name? To Yu Darvish, because he's really looking.
And I don't know.
Never mind, go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah, I was about to say, no, you definitely didn't miss football. We're about to get into football and some hockey as well. We're just going to wrap up here with baseball because obviously there's a couple of clinched teams right now. I know that Tampa Bay recently clinched, as well as the White Sox, and then we also have the A's that recently clinched as well. I think overall you'll probably see the Yankees clinch in the next probably week or so, and more than likely Minnesota as well. It's really down to Cleveland, Toronto, and Seattle. I think Houston probably has second locked up in the West. But yeah. So then that's, and also if you're a Cubs or White Sox fan, you remember the Crosstown Series earlier this year, where the White Sox absolutely sunned the Cubs for 2 games in a row. And here comes their savior, Yu Darvish, on a Sunday afternoon, and he pitches lights out against one of the best lineups in the league, and really only gives up a Jose Abreu home run. Other than that, he was filthy that game. So, shout out to Yu Darvish, man. That's a good comeback story. But baseball is getting interesting here, and obviously with this expanded playoffs, we'll start to see some teams clinch over the next week or so, and that should be fun. But the hockey is all set now, Nick. It seems like they kind of flew by, but we've got game 1 tonight, and I was super high on the Vegas Golden Knights, and I don't know, man. The Stars just seem to have something this year when it comes to scoring, especially. And we got game 1 of the Stars and Lightning tonight.
Yeah, dude. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to the Tampa Bay Lightning for doing God's work and getting the fish sticks out of the playoffs, dude. Because if I had to sit here and look at idiot Islander fans acting like that they're like I saw something on what day was it? It was a day that they lost, and somebody had put up on their Facebook claiming how the Islanders are like the new young team in New York, like they're the new up and coming team.
Okay.
Like, did you not just understand that the Rangers just won the number 1 overall pick? And have you not been looking at our roster? Like, get out of here, dude.
And let's be honest. Who's going to have money in the offseason? The Rangers or the Islanders? Who's going to be able to get free agents? Have the Islanders gotten to that point quite yet? I'm not sure.
No. And the Tampa Bay Lightning remembered them why they are the second-rate team.
Yeah. And I'll say this about Tampa Bay, man. I said about Vasilevsky before that, when you have a guy like that between the pipes, it makes it a lot easier for defenders. And because Tampa Bay has so many ways that they can score, they're always in the game. And that's why I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because, Dallas has a lot of, savvy veterans. Tyler Seguin's been there for, quite a while. And on top of that, they're a really, deep team. They have three lines that can beat you, pretty constantly. So it's going to be an interesting matchup tonight. I'm hoping that I can catch that. But who do you think is the favorite? I mean, obviously right now it has to be Tampa Bay just based on what we've seen from them. But what are your thoughts early on here before Game 1?
Well, right now I am reading that there's no Steven Stamkos for the Lightning later on tonight.
Oh wow.
I actually have the Stars winning it in 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the Lightning have really been suffering. I know they're in the finals, but they've been really suffering through injury between Stamkos being gone, and then they got this young kid, Brandon Point.
Yeah, he's their other center. Yeah,
and I know that he's really big for that team, and you notice that when Point went out, the Lightning had tough time of scoring because they lost 2-1 in Game 5 in overtime, but then had to win 2-1 in overtime in Game 6 to advance. So the scoring has really come down, and you mentioned earlier the way that the Stars have kind of been scoring at the clip that they're going at right now. Not having Point and not having Stamkos really hurts Tampa Bay. And, the Stars are hot. I'm not saying Tampa Bay's not, but the Stars are hot and, really underneath the radar. So something tells me I really like the Stars in 7.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna diss Tampa and be like, oh, well, they're 5. Nah, I think it's gonna be a full 7. They're really gonna give the Stars a run for the money, but I think the Stars are gonna prevail in this one.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I was so high on Vegas. And to see the way that the Stars were able to dispatch Vegas, it really makes me think that the Stars are sort of – you ever sort of have that team of destiny where you're like they don't even have to be the best team on the ice that night. They could just win, right? So I see that with the Stars. I know Ben Bishop is going to be out, but, they've been pretty – the big thing about this series is going to be like who's going to be able to deal with this new atmosphere, right? You're so used to Stanley Cups being this, electric atmosphere, and home ice advantage is such a huge thing. And now you're going to go into a 7-game series with basically nobody in the stands. It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I got Dallas as well, and probably a tight series, just simply based on the fact that again they took out the team that I thought was originally going to be there, but. We got Christian Randall saying Stars winning it all. Said now if only the Bucks can clinch it this year. Kucherov mentioned Kucherov as well. That's another huge guy for Tampa Bay. Heather Marsal, she said, hey, Nick, don't be hating on the Islanders fans. I've been in 19 NHL arenas, and Nassau Coliseum was one of the best in terms of atmosphere. Yes, was awesome. Heather, did they turn the lights on in Nassau Coliseum yet?
Hey, can I respond to that real
Please,
quick?
go ahead.
Most Islander fans are Mets fans.
Oh, okay. It's like a Long Island thing.
And let me tell you what, dude, you want to talk about two fan bases that are very unoriginal when it comes to stuff. I remember when Billy Wagner left Houston and went to go close games for the Mets.
Yeah.
And he came out to Enter Sandman. And Yankee fans absolutely gave it to Billy Wagner because there's only one guy that comes out to Enter Sandman in New York, and it's not Billy Wagner. I mean, you're going to tell me of all the chants you're going to steal some stolen Daniel Bryan yes chant. That's the best you got? Dude, the Islanders will always be second rate to the Rangers. They had their glory days when they won 4 in a row. But, for everyone trying to make the Islanders seem like the second coming, they haven't won a cup, let alone been to a Stanley Cup Finals since they won it in '83, and that's the year I was born.
See, the sensitive part of me wants to be like, you know what? Let Islanders fans be happy. You know, they finally got a team that they can, you know, hang their hat on. So we'll let them be happy about that one. Josh Topegio, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Josh Tepego's in the chat. Thanks for chatting with us, Josh. He said Tampa in 5, they are due for a cup. Christian Randall also says the Stars in 6. And Heather, she responded to you, Nick. She said the 2 Islanders fans I went to the game with are Yankees fans who live in Merrick. Interesting, yeah, Heather.
Yeah, that's why I said most of them, not all of them, but most of them.
Well, thanks for joining, Heather. Well, you're going to be our official Islanders correspondent, Heather. So stay on top of that one.
She's a Blackhawks fan.
Oh, correct? She is. Okay, good, awesome. Well, then in that case, we'll let. I have also. It's weird. I have heard that Nassau Stadium has really cool hockey atmosphere, but I've also heard that they're desperately trying to leave Nassau Stadium and that they don't like it as much. So
the Islanders are a mess, bro.
Yeah. So
they're a mess.
But hopefully we'll have some more sort of concrete stuff as far as stories are concerned next week for the NHL. Like I said, game 1 is tonight at 6:30. So about 3 hours from now we should have Stanley Cup hockey. Nick, we've been gone for a little while and things have changed in the NFL. We finally got week 1 under the belt. I guess we'll start with our teams because obviously we're selfish about our teams. We love our teams. The Bears, embarrassing 3 quarters in Detroit and found a way to win. I guess that's football, right? It's just like you get happy about a win, but play like shit for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden in 1 quarter get it all back. So Bears fans are still on a high. We're 1-0. Bucs fans not so good debut as far as New Orleans is concerned, but in terms of game 1 of the Tom Brady era, didn't go as what you were hoping, but obviously still a lot to be, optimistic about for Bucs fans.
Yeah, 100%. And it did hurt to kind of see, what happened in New Orleans. But I also, too, kind of chalk a lot of that up. I personally will chalk a lot of that up to the fact that, new quarterback, new system, new players,
new expectations.
Kind of hurt, right? There were a lot of off like that. Here's the thing. Here's the funny thing. Bruce Arians keeps the same energy with Tom Brady as he did with Jameis.
I love that.
Last year.
I love that.
And in the one interception where Brady threw it over Mike Evans, and a lot of people said that Mike Evans stopped on his route. Actually, that's not true. According to Bruce Arians, Tom Brady made a bad read.
He just made the wrong read, right?
Bad pass. Mike Evans did what he was supposed to. The pick 6, Tom Brady even said, "Hey, that's on me. I made a bad pass." What's going to kill the Buccaneers as time goes on is if they don't figure something out with Donovan Smith, the Buccaneers are going to go nowhere.
Yeah, they were in trouble as far as pass rush was concerned.
Exactly, dude. Okay, here's what's funny. It's not really that funny, but what's interesting is Cam Jordan was going against Donovan Smith, I think, for like the first 2 quarters or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then for whatever reason, New Orleans switched up their defensive personnel. So Cam Jordan was going against Wirfs, and I can't think of whoever is on the would technically be the right side was on the left side against Donovan Smith, and he was still getting into the backfield. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, dude, Donovan Smith's the same guy who at the beginning of the year was coming out saying how, he didn't know if he wanted to play because he had a daughter and the coronavirus and this, that, and everything else. And this idiot went out there and played as if he didn't even want to be out there in the first place.
Right, yeah.
He put 2 arms on Cam Jordan, and within not even 3 seconds, Cam Jordan was ready to hit Tom Brady. Tom Brady had almost little to no time to really sit in the pocket. But again, I think that, there needs to be some familiarity between Tom Brady and especially these receivers, because think about it. There's all this hype about Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady being on the same page. And if I'm not mistaken, O.J. Howard actually had either more targets and or more catches and definitely had more touchdowns than Rob Gronkowski. So, at the end of the day, I think Tom Brady looked average at best. But again, I'm not going to tweak too hard about them losing, because I thought the defense, even though we gave up 34 points, 7 of them thanks to Tom Brady, I thought the defense overall really looked good.
Me too.
I think, Drew Brees has always been has done a good job of getting rid of the ball. But, the turnovers and then the lack of us having no offense put the defense in a bad position. So we got Carolina this week. I expect things to get better, but, there's a lot of question marks going into the first week after the way that the first week went for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look into as far as his chemistry with wide receivers, because I think the best chemistry that he looked to have was with Scotty Miller, and that was one of those things where maybe he is more comfortable with these slot guys, just because of, let's be honest, a lot of people were talking about Tom Brady's arm strength, right, and his ability to zip the ball in, and we saw it on that pick six. Maybe Tom Brady 5 years ago, he can make that really tight throw towards the sideline. But what happens is when you got a ball that's floating a little bit, that cornerback has a chance to make that play, and Janoris Jenkins obviously did make that play and housed it. So, I obviously expect them to be a lot better. And I personally, I think Scotty Miller's his ceiling is huge in this offense, because you saw how much attention Mike Evans got. Obviously, Lattimore is going to follow him around, but then Godwin, he can play in different wide receiver spots, but when Scotty Miller's inside, he's able to get that space between him and the defender that Tom really needs in the middle. One thing I will also say, Nick, is the Bucs have to figure out who the receiving back is going to be in this offense. I know they relied pretty heavily on Ronald Jones, which was encouraging to see for me, because I'm a fantasy owner of him, but also because you see so much competition in the backfield. And LaShawn McCoy, as much as I love him, he's not James White. He's not a guy that's going to be getting open on a consistent basis and giving a safety valve to Tom Brady. I think what they really should do is try and almost flip things. Make Leonard Fournette their first and second down back, and give Ronald Jones a lot more of these passing downs, because it seems like, spacing-wise, he runs hard. I love the way he ran against New Orleans. The problem is, it seems like the offensive line is not able to give enough space on some sides for him to really break out. So I think he's a candidate for that this week, especially with the poor Carolina defense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Said something earlier.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments.
He said that the OTA and preseason argument is moot because I guess Brady was supposedly breaking rules as far as having OTAs. You might be right on the OTA, but I could not disagree with you anymore about the preseason. Having OTAs and having preseason, you should know better, are two totally different things. If you're not out there during game time trying – that's why I always keep saying that when fans bitch and moan about no preseason,
it's not for you.
Preseason isn't for us as fans.
Yeah.
That's why they need those 4 games. That's why you need that first game to get you in the football shape. And then you use that second game to kind of try to really get you in the football game shape. Then that third game is your dress rehearsal. And then the fourth game is due to get a week off. But that fourth game is really for your second and third stringers to get that spot. The preseason is not for us. But the preseason is very important for a team like Tampa, or maybe for a team like Carolina, who has new quarterbacks, new head coaches. The New York Giants are another one that has new head coaches to implement the system, because you can go against your own defense for as long as you want to. It's not game time. It's not game shape.
Yeah.
You're not in game shape. So that's why I'm thinking that saying that the preseason is moot, I think is not fair. I think they needed a preseason so they can get on the same page. That's why New Orleans looks so good. New Orleans didn't need a preseason because who's different on that offense?
Right.
You still had Latavius Murray. You still had Alvin Kamara. You still had Michael Thomas, who didn't look that great. Well, obviously he must have been hurt.
Yeah.
And you still had Drew Brees. And you still have Sean Payton, who's been with this team for what, like 10 plus years now.
Yeah.
So they didn't need it as much as we did. So no, the Buccaneers needed a preseason, but he did say that Fournette is going to be started by week 6. We'll see, because Leonard didn't really get that many touches as far as in the first game, but we'll see how it is on the second game. But if you look at that game, a lot of the better holes that Ronald Jones was able to run by were coming from the right side with Kappa and Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah.
Donovan Smith, again, struggled so bad, he couldn't even get a hole good enough. Ali Marpet can only do so much.
Yeah.
As soon as Ronald Jones touched the ball, Donovan Smith was supposed to be guarding is already in the backfield.
Yeah.
So Donovan Smith, I think, is being put on notice. And, Bruce Arians did a good job calling everybody and their mama out this past week.
Yeah.
And then you get all these reports talking about, well, we asked Tom Brady, how does he feel about being criticized? Dude, I mean, what is Tom Brady, 21 now?
You're a rookie? Yeah.
Exactly, dude. He's the quarterback of the team, and if he jags, he needs to get yelled at.
Yeah.
So let's stop trying to make things out of, is there a rift between Arians and Tom Brady? No. Arians I wouldn't say he's a perfectionist, but he expects us to go down and he expects us to win and play well, and that's what we didn't do, and he called people out as accordingly, and I have absolutely no problem with that.
And it's not like Belichick used to coddle them,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Josh, he's wondering, thoughts on Bears defense going into week 2. Mac questionable to play last I heard. I wouldn't worry too much about the questionable tag because the Bears for some reason feel like pass rushers don't have to practice. That you just get on the field and you just pass rush, and that's all it is. So that same thing with Robert Quinn. He didn't play last week, so I want to reserve my judgments on the Bears defense until I see him on the field. So we'll see what that looks like tomorrow against the Giants. But that's probably where you're going to see who the Bears are. Christian says, hey, Bears hopefully will play better in week 2. Bucks should win easily against Panthers, and Saints versus Raiders should be a good game. Christian also said, I sure hope so because he played his butt off. Oh, he's talking about Corey Crawford. Him and Heather having a discussion about the Blackhawks potentially re-signing him, and maybe felt a little bit disrespected that he only got a 1-year deal from the Blackhawks. Heather is saying the Bears will light up the Giants defense tomorrow. Look for A-Rob to earn that new contract, and Jimmy Graham was a good pickup for this year. The Giants defense, I'll be honest with you, they looked a lot better than I thought against Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna say this. The Bears cannot play the game that they played last week, and win this game. They've got to come out first quarter and put the pressure on, especially Daniel Jones. I know that there's a lot of people saying there should be a big week for Khalil Mack and hopefully Robert Quinn if he ends up playing, so that should be big for us as well. The comments are popping right now, Nick. We got Christian said, I sure hope the Bears are extending A-Rob. They're gonna extend A-Rob. Listen, this whole A-Rob stuff is a leverage tactic. If you've ever been around the NFL contract extension talks, it's always, I'm going to make this move to put pressure on the team, and the team is going to have to come and pay me now. So that's what A-Rob is hoping for. I don't think he's going anywhere. They're certainly not going to trade him. I mean, all the stuff about trading him to, the Patriots or the Packers, that's not happening. He's going to stay here, even if it's just for the year. And then, do you guys think that if the Bears miss the playoffs this year, Ryan Pace is gone? I say he and the Bears would draft a QB like Trey Lance. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is make or break year for both Nagy and Ryan Pace. If they don't make the playoffs, especially if they don't, if they don't make the playoffs, it's done. But if they don't really show that this team is a cohesive team that can be competitive, it's going to be really tough to come back. And then Nick, Christian is asking, have you played Madden 21 yet? I'd heard it sucks. Want to see if I wait till Christmas. I'll wait to give my opinion on that because I think you already know. But what's your opinion on it, Nick?
I haven't played it yet, but
okay.
I'm hearing the same thing that it kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's a $60 roster update. is what it is. It's new menus, new colored menus, and the gameplay very glitchy. As far as realism is concerned, it looks nice. But the problem is, video games have looked really nice for the last 10 years. Like, let's be honest, Madden looked dope as hell 5 years ago. It still looks dope as hell, but I'm talking about gameplay-wise. And remember how last year, Nick, there was like this mode where you could be a QB and kind of work your way into college and then back into the NFL. And it's kind of like a different sort of career mode. They switched it up this year, and they tried to make it so that, new storyline, and you can be a wide receiver or a running back, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't work playing, So I would wait until I think FIFA is going to become. So we had NBA 2K21 come out. You're going to have FIFA coming out at the beginning of next month, and then you have another couple games coming out. I would expect by Christmas or around December, you'll probably be able to get a better deal on that. So maybe wait for that one. And 2K.
Yeah,
if there's
just said it's time for that 2K22 to come.
You're on the right show, Christian, because we're both 2K fans, and me and you or Nick are both on the boat that let's get on this NCAA game. Let's get on this NCAA game,
dude. This should have been done.
Yeah, I'm pissed.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm pissed.
I mean, what was the point? Like, what's the point of doing all this fighting, talking about about the likeness and whatnot? And then you do nothing about it afterwards. Like, come on, man. Like, somebody's sitting on their hands. EA Sports, I saw that. You know what? I'm going to tell you what, dude. I've been noticing that EA Sports is they're either just sitting on their hands waiting for the Xbox Series X and the PS5 to come out, or they're really sucking because of the COVID, or I don't know what's going on, because I just downloaded UFC 4, or at least the trial of UFC 4, and for whatever reason, it only got 2 stars, according to the Xbox.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't read any reviews or anything on it, and I happen to really like the UFC games because my stand-up in UFC is absolutely impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it only got 2 stars, and I liked UFC 3, I'm going to have to find out what's going on. But I think these guys are really just taking a year off and are about to put out monster games. So, 2K's really been running the basketball game. They haven't even really touched the hockey game. I think they need to really start talking about coming back for football. Yeah. And you need EA Sports on their heels, or not EA, but whoever's making the show, because the show is multi-platinum or multi-platform, coming out in 21, I think, either 21 or 22, one of the two. It's not a PlayStation exclusive anymore. So
yeah, and so there's a lot of games now too. I think like FIFA 21, for example, you could play it on the PS4, and then once you get the PS5, you could play it on the PS5 as well. So and that's another huge thing is, when it comes to video games, it's all about the market, right? So like right now, because Madden is the only show running, they're like, fuck you. We're going to do what we want. And if you like it, buy the game. And if you don't like it, fuck you. We're going to be fine. So, and that's another thing that bothers me is just that there's so much money to be made with those college football games. Like, you and I are not the only people chiming for college football games. I mean, I know there's a Reddit subreddit that's specifically dedicated to people who still play that last version of NCAA. I think it had Denard, who is it that the Michigan player that was on the cover that year? He was a former Heisman. You're right. It was Denard Robinson. Yeah. So there's still thousands and thousands of people still playing that game because it is a tremendous game. So and I think one thing that I mentioned one thing that I saw was that. Was it Xbox that you can play all of the previous Xbox games, but the PS5 there's only a limited amount of previous games you can play? Did I read that? Yeah. So if that's the case, I might have to fuck around and switch to Xbox, to be quite honest.
I know, dude. And you get all these PS5 moves that come out to them. But what about the exclusives? We got God of War and blah, blah,
yeah, I don't play shit like that either. Yeah.
I mean, look, to be honest with you, the only 3 exclusives that I ever played that's on the PS5 or 4 or whatever was God of War, The Last of Us, and Uncharted. Everything else you can keep it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and
dude,
sports games is what Xbox is really, really good with, though. It's like they have multiple options, and if they can get if I can play, listen, if I can play NCAA on my new Xbox, I'm going to get the Xbox. It's simple as that.
Exactly. Freaking PS5.
All right, Nick.
Like, look, dude, because I play the mess out of Gears of War.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that's a classic.
Gears of War 5 came out, and it was on the Game Pass.
Yeah,
it was working home, dude. I was in that bad boy flipping the mess out of that. I can't wait till I know 6 has got to be on the way, so I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and I'm irrationally excited for FIFA 21, even though I know that's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be a $60 roster update. So,
hey, you know what? Speaking of which, before we get into games, dude, have you ever played PES?
So it's funny you mentioned that because I was just about to mention this, that PES decided to not make a game this year. They said so what they're going to do is they're going to focus, they said they're going to focus their game development on the PS5 and the new Xbox. So they're not putting out a PES game this year. It'll just be FIFA. But next year, they're going to basically put all of their effort in going all in on a cross-platform game that is specific to PS5 and the new Xbox.
This is all I'm gonna say to PES. If PES comes out, like, you know, if I create my own guy, if you come out with ways where I can do drills to better my dude, I may never play FIFA again. I think PES is actually a really good game.
It plays a lot different than FIFA too.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It plays a little bit more,
I would say realistic, honestly.
There you go. You know, that's what I almost said professional.
I mean, because FIFA, man, FIFA, if you got a guy like Kylian Mbappe who's like got a 95 speed, he is going to be running past 11 defenders every single time he gets the ball because he's just so fast. And another thing about PES is they are the OG game. People don't realize PES was kind of big before FIFA was, and PES had the game on lock before FIFA did. So, and let's remember, PES is making moves. I don't know if I told you this, but Juventus, who's one of the biggest soccer clubs in the world, they're in Italy, and they have Cristiano Ronaldo, Dybala, a bunch of these really top class players. PES bought the rights to Juventus. So basically, they're the only place or the only game that can have Juventus in the game. So when you play FIFA this year, you're playing with Piemonte Calcio. It's a generic game with all the players from Juventus, but they can't use Juventus. They can't use the stadium. They can't use the logo. They can't use so PES is going to start to do this. I'm hearing they're going to try to do that with Real Madrid. They're going to try and do that with Barcelona, with Man United. If they try that, they're going to get a lot of people over from FIFA. So that's another thing to keep an eye on with PES.
Tell you, man, EA Sports ain't got it on lock like they used to.
Because the market is different now, Nick. People now, when you monopolize a market and say, I'm the only show in town, you feel all big. You're like, all right, people are buying our shit. Once that competition comes, it's going to be tough. So FIFA is another one. I'm going to reserve judgment until I buy FIFA 21. I'm going to have to buy it in October, and I'll just figure it out and see what happens. But I'm definitely a little bit excited for that one. So, Nick, keep an eye.
Go ahead. You know what else, too, before we go on?
No, go ahead.
Another thing is, too, like, I think a lot of these companies think that, let's take the NFL, for instance. I think a lot of these companies underestimate who it is that they're dealing with,
right,
when it comes to the NFL, because you're just thinking, okay, it's the NFL, they got bigger issues to worry about than a video game, we'll just put out whatever.
Right.
But if they start getting those emails and calls and saying, hey, man, I don't know who to talk to about making a better video game, but this EA stuff that we're buying is flipping crap. Or if you get someone that religiously plays video games and they're like, dude, this game's actually been seemingly getting worse than it is getting better, we're going to start looking elsewhere. They start underestimating, like, oh, crap, I didn't think they were going to notice. Oh, crap, what are we going to do? And now you find yourself, scrambling, trying to put something together, dude. And I think that's what EA Sports has done, where it's like, at least when you played the show, I felt like the show was not a roster upgrade. Like there was always
Right.
something better.
Yeah.
That they did in the show to make the game seemingly different so that people would go out and buy it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Where it was Madden, they've been insulting everyone's intelligence so hard to a point to where it's like, well, we'll just put it out because they're going to give us our 60 anyway. And now people are starting to get smarter and they're like, dude, like, we're just buying this so we can play Twitch and stuff on it, but I'm not enjoying it, and I will bitch and complain.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who just update the rosters online to Madden 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got plenty of buddies who are like, dude, I just downloaded the roster off an online. There's dudes out there who dedicate their time to making the rosters look good in FIFA 21, and that's all you got to do if that's the case. So, same thing with FIFA, I think. And what I will say about the MLB The Show, one thing I was really impressed with, Nick, is that they got full minor league systems in this year. So Luis Robert, Nick Madrigal, all of these guys that in previous years you would never see on the actual game are all in there. Real faces, real stats, real everything. That's pretty valuable, man. I like that.
I agree 100%.
Well, we definitely got to do a video game segment every single week now.
Oh, yeah, dude. We have to. Especially with all the new systems coming out soon.
Yeah, and I'm getting into video games.
And I thought it was kind of funny, like how I think it was the PS5 changed their tune on how much their system was going to be, because wasn't it supposed to run like some $700? And then when the Xbox came out, they're like, nah, dude, we'll charge $4 at best. And PlayStation 5 was like, okay, I guess we'll bump it down to $4. I bet you will.
Yeah, and one of the things that bothers me, Nick, is like they're trying to mention all the features of the system except the actual gameplay and the actual video games, right? It's like, well, on the PS5, you can hook it up to something, it'll be 4K, and it's like, dude, just show me the system that's gonna have the best. Like one thing that I will say that I miss about the Xbox is the actual sort of menu experience. The menu experience in PlayStation is horrendous. I hate it to this day. I mean, I play it because you can only play the show on there, and that's honestly the only reason why I bought PS4 was because I was like, listen, I want to play the show. So when it came down to it, you buy the system for some of these exclusives, and then you realize, there's a lot of shortcomings here, and they've got their work cut out for them, because let's be honest, it's not like these two systems are going to be the only systems to come out in the next 5-10 years. I think both of these companies realize, both Microsoft and Sony realize, there's competition out there now. As even if it's little, there is competition out there now. It's not going to be GameCube or Sega Genesis levels of stuff, but you're going to start to see some systems pop out of nowhere, and they're going to be $200-$300, and you're going to have a lot of people say, I'd rather try this out and get my games that way. And especially when it comes to computer games too.
Yeah, and think about it like this. Who would have thought that people were having a hard-ass time finding Nintendo Switches?
Oh, yeah, and they're hard to find now.
Find a Switch.
Yeah. And, I mean, even even when it comes to my experience with that, those things are dope as hell, because I didn't know until recently that you could hook that thing up to the TV afterwards and play it on your TV, too. I mean, I had no idea about that. That changed the game.
Yep.
So yeah, Nick, keep an eye out on the comment section so we could go through the games this week.
Yes, sir.
So I know Thursday Night Football, I don't know what it is. They're just trolling us at this point. This week it's the Bengals and the Browns. Next week is the Dolphins and the fucking Jaguars. Can we get a good game on Thursday Night Football? Even though, listen, this game, yeah, go ahead.
No, dude, either give us better games or stop putting football on Thursday.
That's it. It's simple as that. Listen, man, I would rather honestly not have a game on Thursday and have an extra game on Sunday than to have to watch. I mean, listen, this game didn't turn out to be that bad, right? We got to see Joe Burrow and some of the potential that you'll see out of him in the future. You got to see Cleveland, who there was a lot of expectations with last year, and this year they had a rough week 1, and obviously week 2 went a lot better. Even though it was close, let's be honest, 35-30, you can't be really happy if you're Cleveland on that.
Exactly. But I mean, Nick Chubb, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had a couple of touchdowns too. But, I think a lot of the questions still surround Baker Mayfield. some organizations have a hard time trying to get it right. Cleveland, for whatever reason, has to be one of them. You know, and the funny thing is like a lot of people are trying to clown like Cincinnati, and they're, I think Joe Burrow is going to be a really good quarterback.
And they're a few pieces away too. I think they're a few pieces away. Yeah.
And I'm with you 100% on that. I think there's a brighter future in Cincinnati there is in Cleveland.
Which is crazy to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm not saying that the Browns suck per se. I'm just saying that I really like Joe Burrow. I thought we saw a lot of 316 yards, 3 touchdowns in the loss on Thursday. But if you give AJ Green's getting up there in age, but give him an offensive line. He's got the running back in Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
If John Ross could ever stay healthy, he would be decent. But you give him a couple extra wide receivers.
A tight end for sure. They need a tight end for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
then I think Cincinnati could be really
if you look at the game, though, overall, Nick, the most success that Cincinnati had was throwing the ball down the middle to their tight ends. And it's funny because Uzama's out for the year. He tore his ACL in that game. And they've got this guy, I think it's like Curtis Sampler or something like that. And that dude had like 7 targets in the second half. So clearly this guy is a guy who needs a tight end that can be reliable. I would expect them to make that move this offseason probably. But when you look at it overall, his receivers didn't do him many favors. AJ Green dropped a couple of balls. You had John Ross drop a couple of balls. I agree, though. I loved his mentality, too, which was like, we're not out of this, because it was a laugher earlier. It was like, there was no way they were going to be in this game. And, Baker Mayfield throws that long touchdown to OBJ, and you're like, oh, my God, this is going to be a laugher. And next thing you know, Cleveland's defense continues to get soft, and Baker throws that late interception for no reason. So you got to start to see some progression out of these guys. If I'm you, and if I'm Cincinnati, rather, I'm with you on that. Cincinnati has a brighter future, I think, right now than Cleveland. But Cleveland, they've got to show consistency. Let's be honest. You got to come out next week. Yeah. You've got to show that you can beat the best teams in the league this way. And next week they have the Washington football team, so they've got a pretty easy game on paper, even though Washington had a pretty nice first week. But I don't think we learned. Here's another sort of catch-22 about a season with no preseason. These next couple weeks, you can't make too many judgments on. You can't make too many judgments on what happened last week. You can't make too many judgments on what happened this week. Next week is when you're going to start to see 3 full weeks in pads and playing in, opposing team. That's when you're going to start to make judgments on your team, especially, teams like ours that are, trying to get to the next level. These games are going to be really tough to judge. So, we'll see what Cleveland is able to do, but they do get the win and hop up to 1-1. Cincinnati, after a rough week 1, is now 0-2, but again, things looking up for Joe Burrow and Cincinnati.
Christian says, speaking of the Bengals, if they get the number 1 pick again this year, do you think they'll trade Joe Burrow to draft Trevor Lawrence and Trey Burrow? Absolutely not.
No, why would you do that? No,
I don't think so. I don't think they would do that. First off, nothing against Trevor Lawrence. I think Joe Burrow is the better quarterback. Second off, I would use that number 1 pick to draft a staple stud
offensive lineman. Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
got to get you that.
Or trade back. Honestly, Cincinnati would be ecstatic about that because they could probably just trade back, get more assets. That's what they need at this point. They don't need top heavy stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I wouldn't trade Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's like saying, I drafted my quarterback of the future this year, but I have a project next year that I might be able to get. No, you've already got your quarterback of the future. I think pretty much everyone unanimously agrees that Joe Burrow is going to be a really good player one day. Let's just hope that he stays with Cincinnati because that may be another case of 4 to 5 years in Cincinnati, and then he moves on somewhere else if that doesn't go well. But let's start with the noon games, Nick, and we'll start with my Bears because they are starting at noon, and they got the Giants at home. It seems crazy saying at home because it doesn't really matter if you're at home. There's only a handful of teams now that will have minimum capacity fans. I think that Cleveland game, the Cleveland-Cincinnati game, they had like 6,000 people in there. I don't even see the reason for that, to be quite honest. But anyways, I digress. The 0-1 Giants They had, I guess you could say, a pretty up and down start to their season. When it comes to week one, it was pretty poor as far as Saquon Barkley's concerned. The defense looked a lot better, but Saquon and both Daniel Jones was in trouble all game as well. And you got the Bears, who again played like shit for 3 quarters and had a really nice fourth quarter to win that game. Who do you think is a favorite in this game right now, Nick?
Yeah, dude, the line right now is Bears minus 5.5. But I'll tell you what, dude, I'm all with the Bears on this one. My thing with Chicago, and dude, it drives me up a wall. You want to know why? Okay, this game kind of reminds me a little bit of when you watch like certain college games where they trying to run these stupid little trick plays all day.
Yeah.
And then finally when they run a legit just go down the field offense,
they get 10 yards.
They actually make it.
Yeah,
Dude, just go down the flipping field, bro. Just run the ball. Just run. You don't need to run gadget trick plays with Mitchell Trubisky because you have Tariq Cohen.
Yeah.
Just go down the field, bro.
Yeah.
And when you do that against a team who's not that good in the Detroit Lions, you score, 20-something unanswered points, and you come away with a win. Yeah, they got fortunate some kid dropped the pass, but hey, a W is a W. So,
right.
And I thought it was funny, the perception went from Mitch sucks, can't wait till he's gone, bring in Nick Foles to Money Mitch.
To Money Mitch. Clutch Mitch. Yeah, no, that's the funny part about Bears fans is they've got sort of a shortened memory span where it's like, oh, well, he made 3, I'm nauseous hearing about, well, he made 3 of the best throws of his career in the fourth quarter. He also made 5 of the worst throws in his career in the first 3 quarters. So, to me, man, listen, I'm not going to give you credit because you spent the first 3/4 of the race jogging and then you sprinted the last fourth of the race. No, this is a very cut and dry sport. You have to come out for 60 minutes. That's the teams who do really well. And the teams who sneak away with a win or, ooh, you know what? Well, a win's a win. And people who have that mentality, they don't win in this league. Simple as that. So if you're a Bears fan and you're satisfied and you're like, oh, man, we got exactly what we needed. No, we didn't. We saw a young guy struggle really, really badly to make basic NFL throws. He wasn't in much trouble as far as the pass rush was concerned. We have a good offensive line for the most part, and we don't run the ball as effectively as we need to. I'm not gonna blame them on not running the ball that first game because you're down. And what happens is when you're down, you have to change your mentality. But the problem is when you're down 10 points, it's not the end of the world. You can still run the ball. You can still establish the run. And Matt Nagy seems to forget that because of his trust in his system. So one thing I'll say is, again, we're going to be judging the Bears defense this week a little bit differently because now they have Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack. But last week, the Bears defense was pretty soft. And again, almost gave up a game-winning touchdown to DeAndre Swift. Thank God he dropped that one for us.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I also got the Bears in this one too. I think right now what I'm going to hope to see is the Bears defense dominate and see the Bears offense be able to run the clock out and get a win.
I'm with you on that. I got the Bears.
All right.
Too.
Cool. So let's jump into the Falcons and the Cowboys. Falcons are going to be in Dallas. Dallas coming off of a pretty disappointing week 1 loss. Obviously there's a lot that could have been, there's a lot of fingers to point over there, but same thing that we just talked about earlier. New head coach, new sort of, mentality as a team, and I don't think you can make too many judgments on that one, especially given, the fact that when you think about the Rams, that defense is going to be really tough to deal with at some points. When you got Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey on the same defense, it's going to be a really tough task for a lot of offensive linemen and a lot of wide receivers. So what I'll say is I think the Cowboys are going to run away with this one. Atlanta against Seattle, offensively, it seems like, Nick, you can always bank on the Atlanta Falcons putting up 27 points and losing by 13. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna score, but they're gonna lose.
And it's so funny they do that because Dan Quinn is considered
a defensive coach. Right? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So here's the thing: what they do, like you said, what they do have going for them is that Dirk Cutter is their offensive coordinator,
right?
And that's all Dirk Cutter is an offensive coordinator. He's not a head coach.
Yeah.
But they're gonna have to fix something up defensively. But I think I'm with you. I think this is a game. First, Dallas is favored by 3.5. But I do think that this is a game where Dallas, you're gonna see some of, that dude. This offense is way too good to score more than 17 points. But as you may mention, Jalen Ramsey, one of the best shutdown defenders in the game. Aaron Donald's considered to be one of, if not the best defender in all of football. So with those two being on that field, that offensive line had hell.
Yeah.
Trying to defend him so Dak can make throws. But when you have Zeke and Dak and Amari and Michael Gallup,
CeeDee Lamb, my God.
That's a lot of offensive power. And, we saw what Mike McCarthy did many years, with Aaron Rodgers and the guys that they had. I'm with you. I think it's just a lack of preseason, getting used to the system, getting used to the guys being in game shape. I think this is a game where Dallas puts up mega points. I think they beat Atlanta as well.
Yeah, and I also think this is going to be one where the Falcons put up a lot of points too, but they're just going to lose the game. So,
Exactly.
fantasy-wise, you can always count on Matt Ryan. You can always count on Julio Jones, but thank God fantasy doesn't equate to wins in real life.
Exactly.
Another noon game, Nick. Oh, I'm sorry, and we both had the Cowboys on that one. So, the Lions are visiting the Packers, and the Vikings and the Bears fans are going to be Lions fans this week because it would be really nice to see the Lions come out and make the Packers look bad, as the Packers had a really nice first week. As far as again, we're not going to mention who the opponent is and how strong they are, and oh my God, because at the end of the day, it's week 1, and you just have to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, and you're supposed to, if you're the Packers, you have to have the expectations pretty high this year. So the Lions, obviously coming off of that really, really tough loss. But I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really, I was impressed with some of the Lions, players. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, they've had Adrian Peterson looking like another 1,000-yard rusher. You got DeAndre Swift, who's going to be an amazing running back one day. If Matt Stafford can stay healthy and those receivers can stay healthy, they didn't have Kenny Golladay on Sunday. They're gonna, and they have T.J. Hawkinson. They look great at some points. And I'll be honest with you, I was worried at some points in the first 3 quarters. When you looked at it, you said, "Wow, the Lions look like a better team right now than the Bears." So obviously the Bears escaped with the win there. The Lions have to feel just a little bit of optimism going into Lambeau. Who do you got in this one?
I actually like Green Bay in this one, to be honest with you. Here's a fun fact. The Lions, when they fired Jim Caldwell, he went 9-7. Matt Patricia has won 9 games in the 3 years that he's been head coach. Yeah. That's how inept the Detroit Lions really are.
Yeah.
I thought Green Bay looked really, really good last week against a formidable defense in Minnesota on the road.
Yeah.
To where Devontae Adams had 14 receptions for 156 yards.
Killed my fantasy teams, man.
Yeah, so huge win for Green Bay, but you're going at home. The winds kind of came out of the sails for Detroit last week, thinking they were going to walk away with the win, but the Bears came and snatched it. I think Green Bay still stays on the high, coming in, and they're favored by 6.5. So to pick, I would pick Green Bay, and then if I was a bet man, I would take Green Bay minus the 6.5.
Yeah, so I'll agree with you on one aspect. I think the Packers will probably win this game, but I would be extra careful if you're betting on the Packers this week, because for some reason the Packers always have a little bit of struggle against the Lions until they break away. So be careful with that one. But overall, I think the Packers would be, they'd be in a bad position if they lost this week, especially because the Bears basically came out of there with a win after playing their worst football probably. So if you're the Packers, it's a must-win because, and I expect Aaron Rodgers to go off again this week, because the Lions, if they make Mitch Trubisky look like that, I think Aaron Rodgers can do pretty well.
Right.
Couple of surprising teams. I mean, not really surprising, but Jacksonville at Tennessee. Tennessee, I think you expected it, right? Last year they were a very good team. They come out with a very good win on the road after your kicker misses, 4 kicks, and still able to win the game on Monday Night Football. That showed a lot of resolve for the Titans. They go home and they take on a Jacksonville team that, wow, how did they look in the first? I mean, listen, again, it's the first week. Gardner Minshew, I'm not going to crown this dude quite yet. And they don't have a running back yet either. I mean, I know James Robinson is the guy who took the brunt end of the running back stuff, but they're basically going into this with minimal help as far as the team is concerned. And I know right now, I think it's -7.5 for Tennessee. Jacksonville, if they can pull this one out, I would be hugely, hugely surprised because I think Derrick Henry's going to run all over them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know what happened to the Colts last week. I don't know if they just came out flat, or do we give them, again, the Colts are coming with, a new quarterback.
Yeah.
Frank Wright is still head coach, but, they're still getting used to Phillip Rivers.
And lost Marlon Mack for the year, too, early in that game.
They did. And so, but like you said, Jacksonville came out, Laviska Shenault Jr. had a touchdown.
Yeah.
G.J. Chark, I think, had a touchdown as well. And I'm with you. I'm not ready to necessarily crown Gardner Minshew as this future quarterback, but, I mean, he looked decent enough for them to win. And then I'm with you with Tennessee. It was pretty much a defensive dogfight between them and Denver on Monday night.
Yeah.
But Tennessee able to come out with the win. When you make the game-winning kicks, the other 4 kicks don't
matter, right? Exactly.
Exactly. So I think that's what they're on. I like Tennessee at home. They're favored by 7.5. I like Tennessee at home, but I would actually take Jacksonville plus the 7.5. I think Jacksonville makes this game interesting, but I don't think they win. I think Tennessee comes out with the win.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I will say before we move on, I think anytime a quarterback goes 19 for 20 like Gardner Minshew did, that's a good sign, right? So, I'm not ready to crown him, but that is a really impressive start to a defense that wasn't exactly a pushover last year in the Colts. So, I like the, listen, Jacksonville is trying to prove to people that we don't need these big names. We don't need this. We don't need Leonard Fournette. We can go out and find 5 running backs right now who can do it. And quite frankly, the proof is in the pudding right now with last week. Let's see if they can continue that. But, yeah, I think Tennessee has got this one as far as this week is concerned. Another noon start. We got those Colts that we just mentioned. They started off the year with the loss against Jacksonville, and then obviously Minnesota we mentioned also at home. They had lost to the Packers. So you've got Indianapolis at home this week. They are, I believe, so they're 3-point favorites. -3 are the Colts. This one, honestly, I see this one as Phillip Rivers' sort of breakout game here. I think he wants to show that he can be, because let's be honest, this Colts team wasn't a high-powered passing team last year. They did a really good job with the offensive line. They ran the ball a lot. They had a lot of clock management, and they didn't have the quarterback to do this. So they are adjusting in a way, right? They have new receivers, new look with as far as the tight ends are concerned. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this would be a perfect candidate for a game for Phillip Rivers to break out.
Hey, you know what? Before I talk about this game, I just caught the comment that Christian made about Arizona did it as far as them drafting Josh Rosen and then turn around and drafting Kyler Murray with the first overall pick. The difference between them doing that and Cincinnati doing that was that Arizona switched head coaches.
Right. Yeah, and switched GMs, and the GM too, I believe it was switched as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So they kind of cleaned house, and Kingsbury wanted Murray.
Right.
Whoever is running Cincinnati, they all want Joe Burrow. So I would not see the Bengals in any way sucking so bad that they would go out and be like, okay, Joe, we're going to trade you maybe to like a team like the New York Jets or something, who really need a quarterback or might potentially need a quarterback, and we're going to draft Trevor Lawrence. I cannot see that happen.
I would caution Christian to make sure that he understands that Joe Burrow is not Josh Rosen, right? I like Josh Rosen. I think he's got a really tough, cards dealt to him, but Joe Burrow's on another level.
Exactly. As far as the game is concerned,
this is a tough one. This is one of the closer games
really
of the week.
Tough one because it's like I want to say the Colts are going to win, but then the question I have to ask, was Minnesota really that bad last week, or was Green Bay really that good? And I think with Minnesota, it all starts and ends with the run game. I'm still on the fence about how I felt about them trading Stephon Diggs, even though Stephon Diggs seemed like he wanted out of Minnesota because they were relying so heavily on the run game that he basically wasn't showing his skills, and rightfully so. Indianapolis, I don't think they're as bad as they looked last week. I'm chalking that up to no preseason. I think with them being at home, I would take them for the win, and they're only favored by 3. So I would take the Colts for the win, and if I was a betting man, I would take the Colts minus the 3.
Okay, I think we would probably agree on that one. And next one is some AFC East action. The Dolphins at home after a loss in Week 1 against New England. Closer game than a lot of people have probably anticipated, but the Dolphins did leave with a loss. They will be hosting the Bills, who they had a little bit of an up and down in Week 1, but eventually came out with the win. Josh Allen had a pretty good game. They did have some struggles as far as running the ball is concerned, and I think there was a little bit of a worry as far as the Bills are concerned because they faced the Jets, right? And it's like you expect to blow out the Jets every time you face them, but they came out with the win, and a 10-point win against the team in Week 1 is nothing to scoff at, and they are, I believe, 5.5-point favorites on the road. I like the Bills in this one. I just think right now Miami, with Fitzpatrick, he has something about him that makes people confident in him. But when you actually watch him on the field playing, you're like, I don't know, is there nobody better than this guy right now? Because, 3 picks. What was he at? 3 picks in the first game. New England really played a pretty conservative defensive approach to him, and he still wasn't able to get much going. They don't have a running game quite yet, and Tua is not ready for this quite yet. So I like the Bills on the road.
Yeah, I'm with you, dude. I love the Buffalo Bills in this one, minus 5.5. Even Steven said he's taking the Bills and the points. Dude, the Bills' defense is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
underrated, too. They don't have a lot of guys that stick out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the Jets suck, and they're kind of like, I don't know. I think they're at a crossroad, and we'll get into them in a minute. But, yeah. Dude, I'm so high on Buffalo, and I think Miami right now, they're still trying to find their identity. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is just kind of keeping the throne warm for Tua when the Bills think they're ready. But the Buffalo Bills are ready. I think Josh Allen had a really good game last week. Stephon Diggs didn't get any touchdowns, but 8 receptions for 86 yards. And also Josh Allen, I think, was the best rusher. So I think if the Bills can figure out and getting the running game going, they're going to be dangerous down the road. But as far as this game's concerned, without even spending any more time on it, Bills minus 5.5.
100%. Yeah, and you mentioned the Jets. That's a good timing because the Jets are going to be hosting the San Francisco 49ers this week. The 49ers, one of the teams that I highlighted when we did our previews was the Arizona Cardinals, and I felt like they were going to take a step up and really be able to show offensively that they're a powerhouse. And San Francisco, you would think with Robert Saleh and all the defensive prowess that they have, was not able to get the job done. Even though they looked good early in the game, it really. You can see why Hopkins got paid the way he got paid because the guy is basically unguardable in this system because they're so spread. Let's remember, He comes from Houston that had 0 tight ends and 0 running backs for the last 3 years, and they basically have one good player on the whole offense, and it just so happened to be Hopkins. Now you got Hopkins in Arizona with 5 other receivers out on the field. You as a defense have to play a nickel or a dime pretty much every single time out. They don't use tight ends much. They aren't going to be going under formation much. They're just going to play their game, and San Francisco, I think next time around they'll be more prepared, but they got caught with their pants down a little bit, especially at home. That's what really killed them, is they were at home, and it really just killed them not being able to come out with the win. But again, they are favored in this one, even on the road at the Jets, 7-point favorites. Who you got? Oh, and no George Kittle this week. Sorry.
Say it again.
No George Kittle, D Ford this week.
That's right. And this is a good game for them to rebound because the Jets are just a mess. I think the Jets missed out by not firing Adam Gase last year.
Oh, my God.
Adam Gase is not a head coach. And this is the same dumbass that went out there and said that it was crying the blues because he said he didn't know how hurt Le'Veon Bell really was. It ended up injuring their hamstring worse than it really was. This guy's been a goof for the Jets this whole time. And I think Sam Darnold is a really good quarterback. Adam Gase is not the guy to coach him to get, what you need out of him.
No.
So with that being said, I like the Niners minus the 7. The Jets just got way too many things going on right now. And there's too many holes. And I think, even though there's no George Kittle, I think this is a better matchup for San Francisco with the Jets because the Jets don't really have any barn burners per se offensively. So, I like the Niners minus the 7.
Yeah, we would agree on that one, and again, that's one to monitor with George Kittle because, he gets hurt a lot. I mean, I've had him in fantasy the last couple of years, and he's a guy who gets hurt pretty much every game, but sticks it out. So he had a knee injury. I believe Budda Baker hit him low on a hit against the Cardinals, and he'll be out this week, they say, for precautionary reasons. So we'll see on that one. All right, I believe this is I'm sorry, we got a couple games in the noon window, but another noon window game. The Eagles coming off of a, really rough game against Washington, where they were up big, pretty much looked like they were going to blow them out in the first 2 quarters, and they end up losing the game to the Washington football team that basically it's a bunch of ragtag young guys and some journeymen and Ron Rivera, basically. So big win for Washington the first week, and Philadelphia looking to rebound with the Rams, who, again, we talked about them earlier, look pretty impressive against the Cowboys. Malcolm Brown with a couple of touchdowns, and Jared Goff. He's Jared Goff. We know who this guy is now, right? He's not going to be a guy who's going to make the best plays in the world. But within the offense, he makes the throws that he needs to. They get the touchdowns how they have to, and it's not always going to be through the air. He did have an interception in that game and wasn't able to throw a touchdown, but 275 yards off 20 for 31 throwing. The Rams, I believe... So Philadelphia 1.5-point favorites at home. That's going to be one of probably the big bets of the week here because Philadelphia did not look that great last week, and again, some trouble in Philadelphia with Zach Ertz, trouble on the defensive side, Deshaun Jackson, some injuries. I like the Rams in this one, Nick.
Yeah, I like the Rams too, and I'll take that 1.5 on them. Philadelphia looked
garbage,
mediocre at best last week.
Yeah.
And the question I think I have with Philly is how long is this Carson Wentz show going to really go on?
Yeah.
With you got Jalen Hurts sitting there, who I think is a better fit with this offense than Carson Wentz really is. And with the Rams, if the Eagles don't get, if you thought that Dallas has a much better offensive line than the Philadelphia Eagles do, but even they had their problems with Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
If they did, I know Philadelphia is going to have issues. So, yeah, I like the Rams. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, if I read earlier today that Robert Woods got a $65 million extension
to
stay with the with the LA Rams. So congratulations to him on that. But yeah, I like the Rams plus the 1.5.
Yep, I think especially with that 1.5, you gotta take that one. Broncos and Steelers, both teams played on Monday Night Football separately. The Pittsburgh Steelers had the Giants, who again looked pretty good at some points, but the defense stepped up for Pittsburgh. They lost James Conner in that game, and Ben Roethlisberger, I'll be honest, Nick, didn't look that great. And I think they really depended on their defense, and really the secondary was very leaky for the Giants. Juju Smith-Schuster got 2 touchdowns, but again, Ben didn't look. He didn't look Ben Roethlisberger like in some points, but he did come back with those 3 touchdowns, so hard to argue with that. And they come out with the win on Monday Night Football. Denver, we just talked about them. They faced Tennessee on Monday Night Football, and Tennessee was gift-wrapping them every single quarter. Here's the game. Have the game, Denver. Here's the game, Vic Fangio. And Vic Fangio just is showing, and I'm sorry to say this because I loved him in Chicago, he's showing why there was a lot of concerns about him as a head coach. As far as decision-making is concerned, I'm not sure he did the best in that game. I think there was a lot of things he could have done against Tennessee to be more aggressive, especially running the ball, and it didn't really work out too well, even though Melvin Gordon looked really good at some points. They just were, continuing to play from behind. No Phillip Lindsay this week, but they will have, obviously, Melvin Gordon running the ball, and Pittsburgh is at home. They are 7-point favorites. Given -7 to Pittsburgh. Who you got, Nick?
Believe it or not, I actually like Denver in this game. One guy I was impressed with in that game against Tennessee was Jerry Jeudy, and you're seeing why a lot of people consider Jerry Jeudy to be maybe the best wide receiver coming out of this class.
Yeah.
With the premier route running and the premier feet. He looked just so good in that game, and him and Drew Lock were definitely on the same page a lot in that game. Plus, Noah Fant had a touchdown. He looked pretty decent in that game against Tennessee as well. And I'm with you. I think with the Steelers, they're losing James Conner, and I still think Big Ben is still kind of hurt. But he got through the game and they ended up getting the win. But I like Denver plus the set. I like Denver to win. Plus, I'll take them plus the 7 in this one. I think they come out on the road and they end up winning this game. But I do feel what you mean as far as Vic Fangio as a coach. With him being as a coach, I feel like he does make some questionable decisions. That's why I think it was important for Vic Fangio, if you're going to bring, with you knowing that you're a defensive guy, you got to come with a good quality offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you need a guy who can really take the reins when it comes to decision making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think Denver's getting around there. I think they're starting to love Drew Lock. I think Drew Lock's a decent quarterback coming out. But, I like Denver. I really do like Denver in this game against Pittsburgh. So
interesting, yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a fun game to watch because clearly both teams are going to be trying to prove their first game wrong, because a lot of people were saying, listen, Pittsburgh, if that was any team except the Giants, that would be a tough game for them. But, we'll see what happens. The last noon game just so happens to be your Buccaneers, Nick. I don't think we have to spend too much on the Panthers. Listen, new system. Teddy Bridgewater looked uncomfortable at first, but then he got some big throws. Robbie Anderson had a long touchdown last week. The Bucs are at home and 8.5-point favorites. No Chris Godwin this week, but I still like the Bucs to break out in this game, especially on the run side. I think if there was any game that you wanted Ronald Jones to sort of break out in, it's probably this one.
Yeah, dude. I think that. My fault. I can't do two things at once.
You good?
I think with Tampa Bay, this is the week they're going to come out. And really come out strong. Yeah, Chris Godwin on Wednesday was reportedly in concussion protocol. They went ahead, as you said, they ruled him out. I expect to see two names that are going to – I think there's 3 names. I take that back. I'm going to quickly give you maybe even up to 4 names to look out for. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Scotty Miller, Justin Watson, Tyler Johnson. That's the kid we drafted in the 3rd round. the wide receiver out of Minnesota, and Rob Gronkowski. I think at some point the chemistry between Gronk and Brady now has to start coming alive, because Bruce Arians made a very interesting comment where he said they felt that Bruce or that Rob Gronkowski had a couple of matchups with Cam Jordan, and Tom Brady didn't exploit the matchup. So I think it's important now that you have a game underneath, you got the game out of the way. Now you're in game speed. Hopefully they can get together, because like I said earlier, it looked like O.J. Howard and Tom Brady were a lot more on the same page than Gronk and Tom Brady.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes. With Carolina, though, their defense is a long time coming with Luke Kuechly being out now.
Yeah.
So this is really like literally maybe the first game the Bucs have had without Luke Kuechly being across the way.
Yeah.
But they did score a lot of points, a decent amount of points last week against the Raiders.
Yeah.
Carolina did, and Teddy Bridgewater didn't look all that bad last week.
Yeah.
Let me see. Do I have his numbers right here? I do. 269 and a touchdown from last week, and Robbie Anderson had 6 receptions for 114 yards and a touchdown. But let me tell you something about Tampa Bay defensively. Tampa Bay did a lot of good things, good defensively last week. I think if Devin White and Levante David can get on the same page sometimes, because I think sometimes they're not on the same page. What happens, it's going to happen. But when they are, that linebacking crew is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think Devin White is a special player, and I really think that the reason why I brought that up is the only time that New Orleans really scored was when either Tampa was in a stalemate and their offense gave good field position to the defense. Whenever, I don't think they really had a long drive. Those 2 touchdowns that they scored were both on short fields, and then obviously Tampa gave up the pick 6. So
yeah,
I think defensively, I think Todd Bowles is still doing a great job defensively with this team. The Bucs are favored by 8.5. I'm taking Tampa in the points. I think they come out. I think Tom Brady has a monstrous game. I think Scotty Miller might be the one that benefits from it. And let me tell you this, dude. The downfield throws that I think that's another one, a name I need to bring up is Byron Leftwich. Dude, just throw the ball.
Right.
Okay? Tell Tom Brady just to go down the field, throw the ball. If I have Mike Evans, who's 6'3", 6'5", I got O.J. Howard that's 6'5", 6'6". I got Gronk that's like 6'5", 6'6". I got Cameron Brake that's like 6'4". Dude, just go down the damn field, dude. Stop all this trickery, nonsense, and everything's in the shotgun, dude. Just go down the field. So,
yeah.
I think Tom Brady has a big game. I like the Bucs.
Yeah, me too. And I think you made a good point there. It's like you're not dealing with a rookie quarterback, bro. You've got a veteran, one of the best, if not the best quarterback of all time on the field. You don't have to tighten the reins with him, like let him be free and give him the options, because let's be honest, one thing that you can say about Tom Brady is that he will make the throws that you need him to make in the mid-range, regardless of whether or not his arm is there or not. So, yeah, I agree with you, and I also agree. I think Tampa Bay, this is going to be a breakout game for them, I think, and fans will probably feel a lot better after this one.
Yep.
On to the 305 games, Nick. We got both 2 surprising teams, Arizona and Washington, both 1-0. Arizona at home, going to be hosting. We mentioned how they had the surprising win against the 49ers, who, again, reigning NFC champs. And then you've got Washington, who, took out the Eagles late with some defensive prowess. I like Washington's defense, Nick, especially under Ron Rivera. You've got lots of pass rushers, lots of linebackers, lots of guys in the playmakers in the secondary. This is a very sneaky Washington team, especially on the road. They are giving Arizona, so Arizona's -7 in this game. Man, I would say Arizona's probably the safer lock in the pick 'em, but if you're going by the points, I might sneak Washington in there as a dark horse.
I think I'm with you on that, just because and the biggest question is can Arizona did a pretty decent job against San Francisco's front seven, which is no slouch.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, Washington is really good too with Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, just to name a couple of guys. If they can somehow protect Kyler Murray, and or Kyler Murray, has to more or less protect himself by making his own moves and whatnot, Arizona can come out with the win. I do think that they win. Yeah, I don't think they cover. I think they win close with Washington. Washington's no slouch. Dwayne Haskins, I'm still on the fence about him. You know how I feel about Ohio State quarterbacks.
Ohio State QBs.
I really don't think they pan out. But, DeAndre Hopkins last week against, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard Sherman didn't play last week for San Francisco.
He went out after, I believe. Yeah, either he went out after a quarter or he just didn't have the game at all. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. DeAndre Hopkins last week, 14 receptions for 151
and
yards.
almost had a long touchdown too that was called back. So yeah, he's beastly. And let's remember, Kyler Murray, this guy can run.
Yes.
He is a threat because when you got guys like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, they are so dangerous with their feet, not only running the ball down the field, but getting out of pressure, putting themselves in the position outside the pocket. Kyler Murray's going to do that. And let's remember, he's not the biggest guy in the world, right? He's like barely 6 feet, barely 6'1". So, and I don't even think he's that, to be quite honest. So you have to get him out of the pocket. You have to get him involved out of the pocket. I think Arizona will continue to do that. But again, I think Washington, that's going to be a tough game and a well-fought game, so I'm looking forward to that one. Kansas City is going to be in L.A. at the new, I believe it's called the SoFi Stadium for the
something like that.
SoFi. Yeah. So I saw it in Hard Knocks. Yeah, I saw it in Hard Knocks, and looks a state-of-the-art stadium. What a bad timing to have billions of dollars sunk into a new stadium and no fans this year. Sorry about that, L.A. But you got you basically got like 4 teams over in California now, so take your pick. But the Chargers come out with a, would I say it's a convincing win last week? I don't exactly know. I think, obviously Cincinnati is a team that's growing, and we saw it this week. They barely escaped with the 16-13 win, and you've got Kansas City, who barely, a week and a half ago, opened the season up against Houston, and I believe, so Kansas City's minus 8.5 on the road here. I will say this. I like Kansas City in this game, but 8.5 might be a little bit excessive on the road.
I'm with you on that. I think my favorite guy from last week on the Chiefs was Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh yeah, he looked amazing.
He looked really good against Houston. And I'm with you. You like the Chargers won, but they didn't look convincing against Cincinnati. You thought they would have won a little bit more convincingly against a team that's up and growing. And, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes and all the speed that they have. I think they're going to give the Chargers some fits defensively. But, yeah, I think they do win. 8 to me seems a little excessive as well. So I would take the Chiefs for the win, but I would take the Chargers plus the 8.
All right, on the same page. And last 3 o'clock window game, Houston is hosting Baltimore. Baltimore, week 1, it was a rout of Cleveland. We started to see, Cleveland fans starting to jump off the bridge with that defense. But Lamar's Lamar. Baltimore is Baltimore. We saw exactly what they do best, and they killed it. And Houston in that first game, let's be honest, it was a tough game for them. Weren't able to really break free. They had a really nice first quarter. Remember, it was like David Johnson came in and scored that touchdown, and you're like, wow, this team looks good. But Houston right now, they're in a make or break season for their coach, and you can't start off with 2 worst teams to do that against, with Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City in the first week, now Lamar Jackson and Baltimore in the second week. It's Baltimore's minus 7 points on the road here. I like Baltimore in this one.
Yeah, you're right. There's really not much to talk about. You're talking about a team that some people think can really go undefeated this year with all the weapons that they have, especially, them running that special offense with Lamar and Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins and whatnot.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson had 3 TDs last week.
And they didn't even run the ball much last week.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then with Houston, you're right. This couldn't have been 2 of the worst teams to go back-to-back against. With Houston, I think it's Baltimore -7. I don't really think Houston really stands a chance in this game. So I like Baltimore -7.
Tough start for Bill O'Brien's boys.
Yeah.
The Sunday night game is going to be an interesting one this week, Nick. Patriots are going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. The Seahawks coming off of a win against Atlanta. Again, it's like Atlanta's Atlanta, and you can't really expect much out of them. But New England with that impressive win against Miami, even though... Is it sustainable that Cam Newton is running the ball like he's at Auburn? Probably not, but I think that'll change this week, and I think you'll start to see a lot more of the Patriots way. Both 1-0 teams on a Sunday night, both perennial playoff and Super Bowl teams. Seattle's -4 at home. Who you got?
I actually like Seattle in this game. Not taking anything away from the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one thing that was brought up many a times, especially on my Facebook page last week by a lot of my friends was, dude, the Patriots are going to get Cam Newton killed.
Yeah.
and a lot of people thought that because it was Miami, like the hits didn't mean anything, but you're going to end up playing some defense that's just going to come out here and just G-rock Cam Newton.
Yeah.
And this might be one of them. With Seattle, you're right. They played Atlanta. But, dude, do you know how dangerous Seattle can be if Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf get on the same page all year, especially with the size and the stature of DK Metcalf, who's going to be an absolute matchup nightmare with how big he is? Dude, I think this is going to be an interesting one because I'm pretty sure Stephon Gilmore is going to be on DK, but this might be one of them games where you're going to see how good that we know that Russell Wilson can be against a really good, formidable defense. So I like Seattle -3.5 or -4 in this one against New England.
Yeah, I agree. I think also one thing that people were saying about Cam last week was that Belichick only did that because he knew that the Dolphins wouldn't expect it and maybe trying to throw off one of his former assistants in Brian Flores and throw him off his game a little bit. I could see that happening. Belichick's crazy enough to do something like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see one QB run this week from Cam. So, you know how Belichick is. He's diabolically crazy. So I agree, though. I like Seahawks just simply because I'm not convinced with the Patriots quite yet. I want to see them for a 3-4 game stretch before I start to, depend on them as being the Patriots of the past. And then the Monday night game is another intriguing one. The Raiders come out with a win in week 1-0, and they're going to be hosting the Saints in Vegas for the first time. It's going to be interesting. And you've got the Vegas Raiders coming out. They are still, it's -5.5 for New Orleans, so New Orleans seen as favorites on the road. I don't think a lot of people are super convinced of the Raiders' first game, and also, I'm surprised to see with the amount of injuries that the Saints have that the line makers are still very confident in them. That clearly shows that Drew Brees and some of the Sean Payton consistency, they're banking on that right now. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because it's going to be a tight game, I think, and I think Vegas, they're going to run the ball a whole lot this year.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this on ESPN, and they're talking about tickets as low as $642.
Oh my God.
Okay. I'll watch that boy at the crib for free.
I got a 70-inch AC. I'll just keep that right there.
Swear to God, dude, ridiculous. I was very impressed offensively with the Raiders last week. Josh Jacobs had 3 touchdowns. Derek Carr looked okay. Jared Cook had 80 yards on 5 catches last week. I think with the Saints, not taking anything away from the Saints, I think the Saints capitalized on a lot of the Bucs' offensive no preseason issues. think that's why they were as good. Now, outside of the pick six, I think they did. It was a bad pass, and they took advantage of it. I just think that they took advantage because I'm telling you right now, when the Bucks and Saints meet again in week like 9, this won't be the same team they saw in week 1.
Yeah.
With that being said, and I'm looking at right now that Stephania Bell said on Twitter that Michael Thomas is going to be out for the game on Monday night with the high ankle sprain. Give me the Raiders plus the 6.
Yeah.
I think that affects their offensive line because if they can stop, because I think what's his name came out of that game kind of banged up too, Latavius Murray. And we know that the Saints love using Alvin Kamara as kind of that duo back, but more maybe passing than they do him running. Yeah. And Latavius is that guy that does the running. So if you're missing Latavius Murray, you're missing a big chunk out of that offense. And it's now going to be who's going to be the next guy up for Michael Thomas. I mean, with Michael Thomas being out,
Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, exactly. And even Emmanuel Sanders, remember, left that game for a little bit against Tampa with a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
So with this being Las Vegas' first game in Nevada, I like the Raiders, and I'll take them plus the 6.
That's a good point. Also, I mean, 70% of your offensive production from wide receivers leaves when Michael Thomas leaves the game. So it's like, that's a whole different offense. I agree with you. We'll have to see what that looks like because Vegas is going to play with a little bit of extra motivation, clearly, in that new stadium. I don't know if there's going to be fans there per se. I know there's probably like 5 or 6 teams in the whole league that will allow fans. And I know that there's other teams now that are starting to look into it. Things are softening up with the COVID restrictions around the country. So some teams are like, okay, fuck it, we'll take the 5-10K that we can get. But I'm not sure if there'll be fans there, but that should be interesting. And that Vegas stadium is gorgeous. So I can't wait to see that one as well. I know they're going to be starting to host some UFC events. I know Israel Adesanya said that him and John Jones want to fight there in 2021, I believe, for what would be, I believe they're going to say is a light heavyweight, and maybe John Jones will move back to light heavyweight or something. But yeah, I agree with you. I like the Raiders in this one, and I want to see what New Orleans is without Mike Thomas. So that's it for football. We got Covington versus Woodley tonight. That's going to be a pretty nice matchup. I think the card itself is a little bit but Woodley... This is going to be a big fight for Woodley's career, Nick. I mean, this guy is coming off of after basically being a world beater for the first 5 years of his career and nobody getting close to him. He's coming off of 2 losses, one against Kamaru Usman, one against Gilbert Burns. Both guys are basically going to be probably fighting for that title soon. And you've got Woodley against who probably is the next guy up in Colby Covington. So if Colby wins this one, Colby is in the driver's seat to get a rematch from Kamara or whoever wins between him and Gilbert. And this is a big one for Woodley because it's a new camp. He's starting with a couple different techniques. He's training with Jorge Masvidal. He's training with a bunch of these guys. And clearly there's a lot of guys because of the way that Colby Covington left ATT. A lot of guys rooting against Colby and helping Tyron in the process. I'll be honest with you. I'm very scared for Tyron tonight because Colby, the pressure that Colby puts on is really hard to deal with. And what I want to see is Woodley going to let the outside the cage stuff affect him inside the cage? Because, Colby is playing a WWE character. Let's be honest, guys. Colby Covington does not like, I'm sorry to break it to you guys, Colby Covington does not like Donald Trump. He probably never voted for Donald Trump. Colby Covington had a crossroads in his career a couple years ago, and he was a beastly fighter, but nobody knew who the fuck he was. And what he decided was, okay, if you want to play that game, I'm going to find my lane. And he found his lane. He's doing really well with the MAGA crowd. They love him. He's, representing Donald Trump and all this stuff. But I think Tyron and everybody else around Colby knows that Colby is a guy who's playing a WWE character, trying to build his profile in the UFC because he is so good. So we'll see Tyron tonight. The thing about Tyron is he can put Colby out with one. That's all he needs. With Colby,
True.
he's going to have to go 3, 4, 5 rounds of constant pressure to beat Tyron. I'll be honest with you. I'm worried for Tyron, but I like Tyron tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I was thinking the same thing, because if Colby Covington knows that he's one win away from a potential rematch with Kamaru Usman, especially with all the hype. I was actually watching the other day the kind of like behind the scenes stuff that happened between Colby and Kamaru before their fight, some handful of months ago. And it was very interesting how that came up. So I think if Colby knows that he's one win away from trying to regain the welterweight championship, I'm with you. Like, I know that Tyron is trying to regain and get back up to glory, but I think Colby's a little might be just a tad bit hungrier, for lack of a better way of putting it, than Tyron is to get back up to that mountain. So I kind of like Tyron too, but I wouldn't be shocked if Colby came out on top.
Yeah, like I said, I think the power potential is without a doubt on Tyron's side. But the problem is the pressure. And let's remember, Nick, I mean, I hate to say this. I don't want to give the guy too much credit, but Colby almost beat Kamaru. It took Kamaru coming out and really putting the fight away to win that match. So it's going to be an interesting one here tonight. And already, I mean, the main card is a little bit better than the undercard. You got Donald Cerrone facing Nico Price. I like Nico Price in that one. Hamza Chimaev, Nick. This is a name to remember in the UFC. This guy fought twice in 10 days last month. He is now fighting Jared Mearshart on I think it's been 3 weeks since then. So he's fighting basically 3 times in a month and a half. This dude is an absolute animal. Think about Khabib. This guy's from the same area of the world that Khabib is from, Chechnya, and Khabib is from Dagestan. So these are sort of similar upbringings, and he has a similar mentality. Just smash. You know how Khabib's thing is, I'm going to smash you. That's all he said. Well, this guy's the same thing. Hamza Chimaev, he's a guy to keep an eye out for. He puts on constant pressure. His grappling is suffocating. And Jared Mearshart is actually a really nice matchup for him. So we'll get to see what he looks like tonight. But that's pretty much it as far as the card is concerned. It's a large card. Remember I was complaining, Nick, a couple weeks ago, I hate cards that have 6 or 7 fights on it. Like, why the hell even do it if you're going to have 6 or 7 fights? I think this one has a total of 12. Johnny Walker is another one to watch out for on that main card. Yeah, I'm basically trying to draw. I'm drawing a blank now as far as anything else. I mean, Mirsad Bektic is probably going to be a nice fight early in the ESPN Plus card. But and Mackenzie Dern, my future wife, she's fighting too. Yeah, she's fighting Randa Marcos. So, Mackenzie Dern, best of luck to you. I will see you when we get married. Yes, sir. Hey, anything else, Nick? I know that we kind of flew through football here, but we got a pretty stacked night of sports tonight.
Nah, man, that's it. Big shout out and well wishes to Florida State head coach Mike Norvell, who tested positive for the coronavirus, so he will not be on the sidelines when the Noles take on the Hurricanes next week. There was one thing I did want to mention. What's going on with I kept seeing notifications from ESPN, but I wasn't able to pull up the story, but I know you would know. Something going on with Poirier. Is it like money or something?
It's a money situation. Yeah, so they've been trying to make Poirier versus Ferguson happen for quite a while. The problem is Ferguson, they're giving Ferguson what he wants, but they're not giving Dustin what he wants. And listen, dude, shout out to Tony Ferguson. He went out online, he went out on social media and basically said, pay the dude. Like, Dustin Poirier is a legend in the sport at this point. Like, the fact that, maybe a legend is a little bit, too much, but Dustin Poirier has established himself, dude. He deserves the payday. And the UFC, man, they operate like a mafia. It's like Dana White does what he wants, and because what happens is guys like Dustin Poirier come in and they start giving Dana trouble, but then you got a guy like Hamza Chimaev that we just talked about who's like, dude, I'll fight again tonight. You don't even have to pay me. I'll fight for free. You know what I'm saying? So when you get these dudes who are so hungry to get into the league, compared to these guys who have worked 10, 15 years to get here, Dana really throws them away and says, I got what I got out of Hamza because I'm paying him. You know, I feel bad for Hamza Chimaev. He's probably generated millions of dollars over the last couple of weeks for the UFC, and they've probably paid him a couple $100,000. So to me, it's like, we'll see. But yeah, that's what you saw is Dustin. They're having a hard time finding a price for him. Now what they've done is they've taken Michael Chandler, who's one of the best fighters in Bellator. They just recently signed him. He will be the backup for Gaethje versus Khabib in a couple of weeks. So basically, winner of Gaethje-Khabib is probably going to face winner of Tony and Dustin, or Michael Chandler seems to be on the fast track. The problem is Khabib has other plans. If he wins this fight, he wants to fight GSP. So, you know, we'll have to see. The Khabib has a different plan for himself. His dad just passed away recently. He's not really, you know, let's just put it this way. He's a billionaire where he's from now. You know, even though he hasn't made that much money through the UFC, you know, he goes back home and he basically lives like a king, and he's basically the president over there. So, he doesn't have the same fire that he did before. And now that his dad's gone, I think he wants to just go out as an undefeated fighter and maybe try and get himself a fight against GSP to see if he can get the best of all time stuff.
Nice.
It's going to be interesting, the UFC, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
other than that, though, man, I don't have anything else for you.
All right, brother. Well, appreciate it again, man. This is it's always fun when we do this, man. I think it was tough last week not doing this because I'm like, where the hell am I going to talk sports to? You know, it's tough. I'm speaking to the wall right now. But anyways, guys, do us a huge favor. I appreciate everyone watching, sharing, commenting. You know, share out the show, like it. You know, do whatever you guys do. Keep interacting. We really appreciate it. You know, we want to grow this thing. I know you guys like it, but we want to make sure that your friends like it, your family likes it. Everybody likes it, so do us a huge favor. You know, like the Facebook, leave a review, share, comment, do all this stuff. I feel like such a YouTube, content creator when I do this, but you know, it's got to be said.
They spend the first 5 flipping minutes talking about, man, go ahead and hit that
like button. Smash that like button.
Can you get to the content, please?
Yeah, right. It's even worse because I watch a lot of FIFA-related stuff. So it's a bunch of British dudes who are like, smash that like button. We're over here. And I'm like, oh, fuck, man. Just get to what we're trying to talk about.
If you want new exclusive content, go ahead and hit the subscribe button for me.
Everybody sounds like Stormzy from the Drake song. We're like, so anyways, but yeah, guys, lots of sports and stuff to talk next week. So we will be back around the same time next week. For Nick over in Houston, I'm Mac. We'll see you.